Thank you guys for joining us this evening. Coming to you on a Wednesday night. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson Karbley and Ricky Raines. Panthers lose another heartbreaker down to the wire game against the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to break that down tonight. We'll also talk about the game this weekend against the Dallas Cowgirls and talk about some injuries on the docket we got going on, some guys going to IR, a couple guys added to the 53. But first, gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Wonderful. I must give props to Ricky. That intro was the hardest one he's done. That music was awesome, dude. I was like over here vibing, man. And then the Marlboro, smoke them if you got them. I loved it, man. I loved it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It felt like we were at a Shabuzi concert or something.
Yeah, it
right?
did.
But like back in like 1999, bunch of white leather jackets, smoking Marlboro Reds.
Loved it.
Appreciate it, man. I'm good too, man.
Those graphics every week, dude.
Thank you, man.
Really
I appreciate it. That's one of the fun parts about doing this is that we get to be kind of creative and poke fun at the teams that we're playing. I mean, look, dude, as a fan, that's kind of part of like our DNA, right? Is talking shit and poking fun at the opponent. So like we just get to put it out there in a graphic and then talk about it for 2.5 hours, depending on how many beers we drink. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I'm doing well, man. To answer your original question, I'm happy to be here. We're getting closer to Christmas, so I'm getting happier and happier by the day. You guys know that I'm a freak when it comes to that. So yeah, man, doing great. Excited to talk ball tonight.
What are you guys drinking this evening? What do we got going on? Ricky, you kind of teased it with some Christmas things. So I'm curious what you got on your radar.
I did. So this is the one that I was talking about that I've recently discovered. It's from Southern Tier. It is a imperial ale. That is a chestnut praline imperial ale. So it's got some sweetness. And so I don't drink more than like one of them a night, but it's also 8.2%. So it's a relatively large drinker. So I did that one just for the Christmas spirit, right? But then I do have a couple that I wanted to tie in for the names and things like that. So to keep with the Christmas and the way that the Panthers have played the past, 5 weeks, but in particular the past 3, Naughty and Nice Winter Ale, because I have enjoyed getting close, but I'm starting to get kind of pissed off that they keep on moving that dollar bill away from me. It's like that commercial where the guy's got the dollar bill on the reel and you just keep yanking away. You got to be faster than that. I want to get the fucking dollar bill eventually. I want to see Xavier Legette ride the dollar bill. Maybe you catch it and ride dollar bill, right?
Yeah.
Last but not least, I have a IPA from Burial Brewery. And the name of it is what stuck out to me. It's called A Measured Procession of Veracity. And I think that's what Bryce Young has been putting together, to be completely honest, so that when he shows up in 2025, there's no more questions. He's got a history of doing the right thing, and he's done it for a measured amount of time.
Love it.
That's good.
All right,
Bryson, what do you got?
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow. I have one beer, but I have multiple of these ones because when I saw it, I was like, damn, this sounds delicious. So I've never seen it before. Ricky might be familiar with it, but I'm not. It's from Victory Brewing. It's called Resolution. It is a celebratory ale. Never heard of that in my life, but notes of pear, pomegranate, and warm honey. This beer is amazing. I
love it.
I'm loving it, dude. It's 7.5%. And then the name Resolution. Like there's a resolution at the quarterback position for the Carolina Panthers this year, next year, and many years after. So, amazing beer. I highly recommend it.
Man, I keep letting you guys down every week. I am just
like
going
Corona Light.
No, I'm keeping with and I'll say the name, the brewery, right? Fiddlin' Fish this time, right? But I just realized, Ricky, maybe this is where the fishing pole got. If you can see that, there's a little fishing pole right there. Maybe that's the one you're referencing. But this is Ass Over Tea Kettle. They were expensive. I'm gonna drink them up. I'm not gonna let them go to. So that's what I'm drinking. I got a couple more left. So they're heavy, 9.3%. They kicked my ass after about 1.5. So we'll be dabbling with that tonight. But let's get into it.
You're telling me after these 3.5-hour episodes we've been pulling and the bottles of wine you've been crushing, you ain't built up a little more tolerance than one of them things?
Hey, I do have some bottles of wine coming down the pike here, probably next week or the week after. So we'll showcase those when we get to it. But a lot to talk about this evening. You guys kind of, Ricky touched off the top. I guess another tough loss. They're starting to stack up where it's kind of getting sickening. It'd be nice to pull off a W on one of these. So let's talk about the game this weekend, and let's start with Let's start with Xavier Legette right off the top. What were your guys' thoughts about his game? And obviously that crucial drop there in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I remember you asking us, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks before, if we were worried about the Xavier Legette drops. And I said I wasn't. He's a rookie. He's taking his lumps, figuring it out. And it's continued and probably gotten worse. I mean, the situation amplified that drop a lot more than if it was just any other down or play. But there were a couple other drops in that game too. And, even on that drive where that major drop happened, he had the catch that Bryce Young scrambled out of the end zone and threw to him and gained 20 to 30 yards approximately. So I remember watching the play. Everything looked great. Bryce Young makes a wonderful throw. And I remember, same time, before there were any replays, I saw him drop the ball. I saw the ball hit the ground. And I was like, oh, my God, he just drop the ball? And then he gets up and he holds his hands up and thinks it's a touchdown. And the ref was quick to point out that it wasn't. And I was watching it with my wife's cousin, who's an Eagles fan. And I was like, he didn't catch that ball. And he was like, no, I think he did. And I was like, no, I think he didn't. And then we saw what happened. And unfortunately, the next play, what was the next play? Fourth down, if I remember correctly. And Bryce Young scrambles and makes a good play to get outside the pocket and avoid some pressure. But unfortunately, there were no wide receivers open. So Xavier Legette has got to figure this out, man. They drafted him. They traded up in the first round to get him. He's supposed to be the number one wide receiver for this team right now. And here we are again talking about Adam Thielen being that for another year. Shout out to Adam Thielen. The man gets the job done. But, when you spend that kind of draft capital on a wide receiver with the kind of abilities that we know that Xavier Legette has, this wasn't a problem he was having in college, dropping balls. This is a new thing. And I think Dave Canales mentioned it in one of his pressers that he's got a lingering wrist injury, and we've talked about it on this podcast, but he needs to get that shit fixed. What are we doing? If he's dropping these balls, then throw somebody else out there on the field and let him take care of it. You're putting you're kind of tying one leg to the other by just okay, hopefully this wrist injury doesn't get in the way of a potential game-winning touchdown catch. And guess what? It did. So unfortunately, that's what happened. And you could even see in the replay, him going down to the ground, he was kind of protecting that wrist when he was hitting the ground on that touchdown, or that would-be touchdown play from Bryce Young to Xavier Legette. So yeah, it's an issue, and it has to be fixed, and it has to be, there's no more next time I got you. Let's start getting you. Let's start making the plays. Let's start becoming reliable, because this team needs you to do that. We could have won that game. That game was winnable. Who knows if the defense holds up for 40 seconds and 3 timeouts versus the Eagles offense, if that touchdown happens, but it's a chance that we win that game. And that's a franchise, in a season like this, beating the Eagles in Philadelphia, a team that has Super Bowl aspirations this year. I mean, we would have all been on our high horses cheering, oh my God, the future's so bright, which all of us are, I think, right now still. The future does look bright in Carolina because of Bryce Young, but, it was frustrating. And I know I went on a long rant there, but I was disappointed because I was watching it beside my wife's cousin. I wanted to fucking win that game, man. Nobody believed in us. I went in thinking the game was going to be close. I mean, I predicted the Panthers to win last week, and damn it, they almost did it. They almost fucking did it. So, Ricky, what was your opinion on it, man? How did you feel? Were you as upset as I was?
Yeah, I was, man. And you know what, though? I don't think that it's some sort of being a bad fan to be critical of Xavier Legette dropping the football, because that's also been a conversation that's crept up into this too, right? Is it you don't believe in X, you're out on X? Being critical of a player isn't being out on them. I know that all 3 of us on this show have been critical about Bryce Young, And all three of us on this show believe in Bryce Young vehemently. So I think that it's trying to be fair about things and speak what you see while also being a fan and just being optimistic as hell, right? What I worry about with XL, because, you brought it up, Bryson, we have talked about that wrist or hand injury, whatever it may be. They've given no specifics about it. There's been ideas floating around that it's ligament damage. There's been ideas floating around that it's some sort of like hairline fracture. There's no confirmation on any of it. The only thing that has been confirmed by both the coach and the player is that that's not what should be causing these issues. And I will be honest about this, that if we're going to take Dave Canales' word, or we were supposed to take Dave Canales' word, we got to start doing that all across the board, right? So if you're telling me that there's nothing physically wrong with Xavier Legette, I'll believe you. And part of the reason that I'll believe you is because when I watch, he looks like a guy who is in his own head. It's reminiscent of Bryce Young. I finished watching that game and I thought that it looked way more mental on some of the reps.
I agree.
That he was dropping the ball. I think on some of them he is thinking so hard about not catching the ball, like being so caught up with that he's also not playing to his full potential in other areas of the wide receiver position. And that'll sound like I'm saying he's not playing well, and I don't mean that. I actually think that he's playing extremely well outside of the catch phase. I think he's playing extremely well on his release package at the line of scrimmage. He is getting off the line of scrimmage way better than he did at South Carolina, and it is a diverse approach. I think that his route running has been way more fluid and nuanced than I anticipated seeing from him his rookie year. They're also giving him a different route tree than I think I anticipated seeing at the beginning of this season. But none of that matters if you don't catch the football. It's all really good foundational stuff that you can feel good about, like for the progression and development of a player. But catching the football is the number one job for a wide receiver. That's it. And I want to keep it really simple with that. I believe that XL could catch. He did it all the time at South Carolina. He even did it towards the beginning of this year. And that's why I lean towards the mental aspect too, because this is snowballing a little bit for him. And I think that maybe you get him going early in the next week or two. This is a good opportunity, I think, against Dallas. I think that you could kind of generate or manufacture some early touches for the guy. Get the ball in his hands, get him to catch it, get him to see the catches happen. And then I think you try to build momentum and confidence from there.
It's a good point. I just want to quickly plug our super chat for folks out there. I forgot to do that off the top. We got over 200 people listening already in, which we greatly appreciate it. Super chat's that little money icon in the chat on YouTube. If you are feeling gracious enough for the holidays, you can send us some money. You have any questions for us, you can put them in that super chat as well, and we'll discuss them. We do appreciate
super chats had us singing country music and chugging beers and doing all kinds of ludicrous stuff. So if you have a weird request, just put
Ricky's ready to sing a Christmas carol.
Yeah,
so
I'm a clown. I'll dance for you, man.
But going back to the XL discussion, and I agree wholeheartedly with Ricky said, I do think it's a mental thing, and I honestly think it started around when he became the X for this team when Deontay Johnson left. And I feel like he's just thinking too much. Just go out there and play free, man. And I think, it wasn't an issue at South Carolina, the drops. And I just think he's getting overloaded with the role he has taken on literally since probably about middle of the season. And I think it's just too much for him. And he just needs to just get up on that horse and gallop away. Like, just play free, dude. Like, and I really do think he's thinking too much. I wholeheartedly agree. There's some times where they do some shots of him close up after a play, and it just, I don't know, it just feels like there's something in his head. So it's unfortunate because it's become a habit at this point. Like the first couple times, like, all right, he's a rookie, he's making mistakes. But at this point, it's a habit. There's at least one a game, and there's been several crucial drops. There was one a couple of weeks ago late in the game where Bryce dropped it in the basket on probably like a 30, 40-yard pass. I think it was maybe, I don't even remember the game. It might have been the Saints game. It was a game at home, but he doesn't come up with it. So it's happened time and time again. They got to find ways. I don't know if it's, him on the jugs machine. I've seen some people say that's not going to be the easy fix. I don't know what the fix is, but they need to figure it out because Bryce is going to depend on this guy. It just can't be Adam Thielen. We know what that can do and how I feel like sometimes Bryce can get tunnel vision in that way. I don't want that to happen. I want him to have faith in Xavier Legette because I do think he's a good player. I don't think any of us are giving up on him. It's way too early. But he's got to figure it out. He's got to figure it out quick. So,
you know, with the jugs machine thing, like that's a fair thing to say that that's not some sort of like fix all, right? It's not even like a plug for like a tire that has a hole in it. What it is, it can help you kind of get into some disciplined routine and get into like just a process and beginning a process to try to address an issue that is causing you some problems, right? Like I think Chuba Hubbard, I don't think that Chuba Hubbard's biggest flaw in his game necessarily was just not being able to catch the ball as a running back, but it was a starting point for him, right? It was a way for him to start an action immediately, and then he could build off everything else while continuing that action to show that he can take on more responsibility and take on more things. For XL, the jugs machine isn't going to help him time his body and his movement with catches, because that's also part of his issue that I've seen, is that he's leaving his feet unnecessarily and he's making some plays more difficult unnecessarily than they need to be. So the jugs machine won't help with that, but it will help with the mental part, I think, as just get a routine going, man, and do something to show that you're addressing the issue.
Yeah, no, I have a question for you guys. The wide receiver core of Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, and David Moore, where does that rank in the NFL in regards to other rooms across the league?
Ooh,
I would say it's down there.
Yeah. Adam Thielen's really good. And that's the thing that's crazy about this, is that Adam Thielen is still a very good wide receiver. And we talked about that. Like, it's not that he's a bad receiver, but if he's your Batman, then you're in trouble. Like, he is one of the best Robins that you can have in this league, in my opinion. He is a quarterback's best friend. He's going to be where he is. He is scrappy. Like, I know you can use all the, gym rat, all the white wide receiver euphemisms that you would use, but they apply to him, man, to be completely honest. As his speed has diminished a little bit, the skills, the route running, the feel has not changed. But you can't look at the other guys there and feel like they're anything right now. And that doesn't mean they don't have the potential, but what have they done? Right? Yep. I think it's bottom 5 in the league.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I agree with Carter in the chat. He says between 28 and 31. And the crazy part about all of this is that we're seeing a continued Bryce Young resurgence with a lack of really top 30, 40 receiver on the field at any point in time, which is just absolutely crazy to me. Not to get off topic, but I was just thinking of that. I was like, man,
it's a good point.
Just get him a weapon and see where this goes.
I wanted to ask you guys while we're on this conversation. It kind of crept back in for me, and I kind of just touched on a little bit when I was talking about Legette. Are you guys at all concerned over, I would say, the last week and a half, Bryce is zeroing in too much with Adam Thielen? Because that crept into my mind against this Eagles game, and there was a couple times, and honestly, the last play of the game, and I don't have all 22. Maybe Ricky can go check this after this, or he can do it now, or whoever's got the all 22. I think Tremble was open on that 4th down play, and he missed him. And I get worried when Thielen's in there sometimes of Bryce just looking for him. And I know he did spread it out a few times in this game. He did find David Moore and a couple other guys, but that always is in the back of my mind. I do not want him getting back into that because I think that's what hampered him early on. And I feel like when Thielen was out, he was able to spread the ball out and find different guys. And Thielen's great now. I'm not saying that. It just, that concerns me a little bit, that creeping back in.
Yeah. I've watched it twice, the game again. There was plays that Bryce left on the field, but it's hard for me to speak to the progressions and the order in which he is supposed to be reading the field and what the play and what the concept is. Like that's the hardest part, is that you can see somebody open, you can see a possibility of what he could have been doing. The other aspect for me with like relying on Adam Thielen too much, I don't think that's necessarily what it is. I think that he's looking for someone that he trusts on crucial downs. And he targeted Xavier Legette 8 times in that game against the Eagles. Mm-hmm. And that's a fair amount of targets for a guy who dropped 3. right? Like he kept going back to him. He didn't just zero in on Thielen. Now he did on critical downs. He absolutely did. There's also a rapport with Adam Thielen. It's why at the beginning of the year we talked about why he had so much value still to this wide receiver room, even if he's diminishing from a physical trait standpoint, right? But David Moore, it seems like he's got a little bit of a connection with. I don't know, man. It's really hard to say that it's becoming an issue. I think that maybe the supporting cast not stepping up is more of the issue than it is Bryce Young, because Bryce is making plays. He's putting the ball where it needs to be more often than not. If they start making plays, then I think defenses have to act differently as well.
Yeah, I agree with Ricky. I don't think it's as much as an issue for Bryce and Adam Thielen than it is the surrounding cast, the supporting cast on the team. I mean, I don't blame him not looking David Moore's way. And with Xavier Legette dropping the ball as much as he is right now, when it's a down, you got to have it. Why not look for the guy that catches it 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100 when it's on him? So I think he's playing smart. He's making plays when it happened, when we need it. And in the play you're talking about, Curtis, that was the 4th down?
The last play of the game.
Yeah.
The last play of the game.
So, yeah.
On offense.
Where was Trimble at on the field? Because I know Bryce, ran out of the pocket and then came up on the left side.
He was in the middle. He came in the middle. He came in frame, right at the last second. And kind of behind a little bit. But
yeah, and I think maybe that's part of it too, was that Bryce wasn't standing comfortably in the pocket, right? The surveying of the field wasn't exactly what it could have been if he were processing from a controlled base, right? He's on the move. When you do that, you go back to what we just talked about. If I have to give somebody a chance on this, right? Like my internal clock is saying I got to make a throw in the next half a second. Where am I going? You throw into Thielen's direction. And it kind of looked like that's what happened, in my opinion. The throw wasn't even necessarily like I think there's a good chance of this. It was here's where I know Adam Thielen is, and I'm going to give him a chance to make a play.
And to our point, continuing, if I can talk right, talking about the wide receiver room, the chat's talking about Jalen Coker coming back, and there's a possibility that he might be the best wide receiver on this team right now. With the fluidity that he plays with, the hands, he's reliable. I think getting him back is definitely an upgrade for this room, and hopefully we'll see less of David Moore on the field. Just not a big fan of his. So, getting Coker back into the mix, like Made for More put in the chat, is definitely a positive for this team, and hopefully that happens this weekend.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to allude to too. Is I think Coker being in the mix is helpful, and I just don't want to see Bryce get too attached to Thielen like he did last year, and teams are just doubling him, and he's throwing picks again, and
for sure
we're running through the same old shit again. Let's talk about Bryce in clutch moments for a minute. We've talked about a lot of negative things. Let's talk about his play when you got a gun to your head and you need to score. What he has done over the last few weeks, because it's been remarkable, but it also doesn't come to a shock to a lot of us because he did a lot of this at Alabama. Go back to the Auburn overtime game in college. Go back to, I believe, the Tennessee game when they were at good old Rocky Top playing Tennessee there when he went down to the wire with them. There's many games you can go to in his college game where it shows him in clutch moments, but he has been outstanding, not only throwing the ball in those moments, but when he is in trouble in the pocket. And we all know the play that comes to mind, the 3rd down, the one that Xavier Legette caught. So we do got to give him credit. While it was a body catch, he still caught the ball in a very crucial moment that kept that drive alive. Bryce Young has just been making some ridiculous plays. I mean, they are highlight reel plays, and using his small stature, dipping below a defender to get outside. I mean, it was awesome to see. It really was. So I just want to talk about that for a moment. I know we touched on it last week with his clutch gene, but it is something, man, over these last couple of weeks. It's special. It really is. And when we get the ball at the end, honestly, I'm nervous, but I don't sweat as much as I would with another QB in there. I don't. because I feel like he's come up time and time again and proven he can do it.
Yeah, at the end of games, my only worry is that they're going to score with too much time on the clock, and the opposing offense is going to have a chance to score in our defense. I mean, when Bryce gets the ball with 4 minutes or less left in the fourth quarter, like, I have little doubt in my mind that he's going to put his team in scoring position or score a touchdown. Like, the amount of ice in his veins that we've seen time and time again, it is outstanding. Like, he's just locked in at the end of games when you need it the most. And it's says a lot. You know, we've talked about the lack of wide receivers and the lack of weapons on this team in general, and he's getting the job done, you know, and I love to see it. And that play that you talked about, Curtis, that third down in our end zone was great. I mean, I thought it was going to be a safety. Like, you know, it looked like he was getting tackled, and then he breaks it and then makes the play to Xavier Legette. Like, my jaw dropped. I was like, my God, that is a play. Like, if Mahomes made that play, it'd be all over ESPN and all over Twitter, and, like, you know, everybody would be praising him. But Bryce is getting some praise across at least X that I've seen, which is rightfully deserving. You know, I was Josh Norris, who's always been a Bryce supporter. Like, I feel like he's been on the right side of history. Like, he was talking about how his movement in the pocket and his ability to avoid pressure is like the best in the league right now. Like, he's making defensive tackles, defensive ends miss in the pocket and getting out. Like, his elusiveness has just been crazy, and continuing to get better game in and game out. So I'm super impressed with Bryce towards the end of games. And, you know, like you said, Curtis, we've seen it at Alabama, and it's translating to the NFL.
Yeah. That play in particular, though, and I posted it earlier, I think today or yesterday. That play in particular, man, was absolutely ridiculous, because I have watched the league's best do that kind of thing in big games, big moments, in small games and small moments. Just seeing the feat being done by some of the best in the league, I can vividly picture where I was at times where I saw some of those plays being made and said to myself, man, when am I going to have that? Like, I need that in my life. I need that in the Carolina Panthers repertoire. And seeing Bryce Young do it, and he didn't just do it last week. He's done it for 5 games. There has been a play similar to that, not of that exact nature, right? But a play where, by all accounts, he likely should have taken a loss. He likely should have thrown the ball away. He likely should have made a turnover. Just in probability, right? Statistically speaking, he probably should have thrown an interception, but he didn't. And here's the thing about Bryce Young, man. They called him an outlier on the Sports Illustrated cover, right? And it was because of things like that. Curtis, you brought up an incredible point that I think gets overlooked when talking about his size. His frame is really thin, and that was my concern with his size. I had no concern about the height. Have you ever seen like a really tall person trying to reach down and pick something up like underneath a bed or something like that? They struggle. It's difficult, and they grunt and they groan. I know for short people, we sit there and we hate seeing the really tall cabinets, and we're like, God damn it. Like, I don't want to have to get a stepladder out to get that coffee mug. I feel like such a little chump. But you ever seen like Dikembe Mutombo, or rest in peace, like trying to pick something up from underneath a trundle bed? Like, he's struggling. That's what happens when you ask some of these giant dudes to lean down and get Bryce when he is sinking his hips, when he's escaping. You can't do it. And he's so shifty and quick and nimble. Like, I'm not making fun of him because of his size, but it's the Christmas season. You see all the movies, the elves just get away from all the chaos in the world. They move away. And they're also some of the most important people in the damn story. So, like, I'm getting sidetracked because I'm an idiot, but I truly do mean this, that his size can be of benefit to him, especially when navigating in the pocket. Running backs are similar. Small running backs sometimes will get lost in the scrimmage, or in the scrummage, right? Like, you won't be able to see where they're going. They'll pop out of a hole that you didn't even know they were at. Like, that's something that Bryce Young can bring to that element of his game. And speaking of the outlier thing, he's got a chance to be another outlier here, guys. There's not many quarterbacks that get their resurgence opportunity at the team where they lost their first initial opportunity. And if there's anybody that I'm willing to bet on, it's this kid right now. And it's because of the fact that he's doing the things that the big, strong guys do, but he's doing it his way. This is so genuine to what he did well at every other stop along the way. And I know that I'm on a tiny rant. We have a super chat here, but I want to just bring this home real quick because we had a conversation I had a exchange, an interaction with JJ, friend of ours, friend of the show, Panthers culture. And he mentioned to me, though, that there was still this part of skepticism, right? Because we're Panthers fans. And it's hard to fully believe and buy into this because we've seen so many times where we have good things, shiny things for a second, and then it goes away quickly. It's fleeting, right? So, and I get that, and I empathize with it, and I can't even necessarily disagree because I'm a Panthers fan too, and I know that feeling at my core, but I'm looking at this a different way. And I do stupid analogies all the time. Humor me, and let me give you one more. You've seen the viral memes, right? Of the caramel onions and apples, and they put them all in the same bucket and they hand them to their kids, and they're like, yeah, go ahead, go get a caramel apple. And the kid just bites into a fucking Vidalia onion and it ruins their life. So I'm thinking about it this way. It's almost like we have this giant bucket of caramel apples and onions that were placed in front of us. There's 8 caramel onions in this bucket. For the last 7 years, we have been gnawing on caramel onions, just eating them right off the bone, man, nature's way, right? This year, we're eating that 8th onion. Right now, we are. And it started off just like every single other onion we were eating. Pungent, shitty onions covered in sugar, right? Now that we're seeing this from Bryce Young, I'm starting to see the apples. I can almost fucking taste it, right? It's like a honeybee or a golden delicious or whatever it might be. Whatever variety of apple you love, I can taste it, man. We are so close, and I'm choosing to believe that we are running out of onions, and there is nothing but delicious treats left in that bucket for this Carolina Panthers team with Bryce Young.
We're running out of onions, baby. We're running out of onions.
God damn it with your analogies.
I love it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Wesley Carrier's in the giving spirit this season. He says Clowney said it in preseason. He's confident, but we need to see it. His body language is confident, and he looks to be enjoying the game more than any QB1 in the league. Wesley Carrier, $49.99. We do appreciate it,
Wesley.
Sir. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you,
I
man.
couldn't agree more, too, Wesley. Good job, man.
All right, I don't even know where we were at. Ricky's talking about onions.
I know, man. I went way left there.
I was waiting for a Grinch reference there where he's eating an onion in the movie.
Coming later, don't worry.
All right.
When we were talking about Xavier Legette having too much going on, I thought of saying, his mind is like a snow globe right now, but, I'll leave that alone.
Let's talk about another guy who played really well. Well, actually, I just want to touch something quickly on that third down that I don't know if any of us talked about. Did you guys see how close Darius Slay was to tipping that ball that was thrown to Legette? Yep.
Remarkable.
It was like centimeters away. So just to touch on that ball, to get it over him and to find, it was something special.
He pissed off 3 Eagles defenders on that one play. He got away from Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat, and then dropped it right over the outreached hands of Darius Slay. You're talking about 3 of their best players, and Bryce beat him on one play. It's impressive, man.
And we haven't even mentioned throughout this whole time talking about Bryce Young, he went against one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about him making these plays. Overall, the Eagles defense has shut teams down. And Bryce Young was the best quarterback on that field this past Sunday. No doubt about it. He was balling.
And the Eagles defense played well. The defense played like we thought they would play. It was a good defense. You know what I mean? This is just what we should be able to come to expect this, guys. This is our number 1 overall pick, Heisman winning quarterback who is playing exactly that way.
Let's talk about I want to talk about Chuba for a minute, but let's talk about his interception while we're talking about Bryce. Right before half, I know where I'm being Debbie Downer here now, but I just want to touch on it because I know folks are like, oh, you guys never want to talk negative about Bryce. Even though I was just talking a little shit probably 10, 15 minutes ago. But the pick I think he was targeting Adam Thielen right before half. Carolina could have potentially, they were driving, they could have potentially won up. I think it was 17-7 maybe if they would have scored a touchdown at that point. I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, Bryce throws the interception, kind of airmailed it. I'm not even sure who it was. It Gardner Johnson who got the pick on that one. Does anyone remember?
I think
yeah.
So.
What were you guys' thoughts on that play from what Bryce saw? I know when I saw it, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. This is gonna get ugly quick. What were you guys' thoughts on the interception from Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Thielen was open. I thought it was the right read, but the touch just wasn't there on that play. And when you week in and week out play this position, you're going to have that. Like, that happens. The best quarterbacks in the league throw interceptions. So it's not, I think Mahomes, he's thrown a handful this year, Josh Allen, everybody. So, the ball gets away from you sometimes. That really ended up being the difference in the game, I feel like. But, he brought them back and had another chance. But the ball was dropped for the touchdown. So, which we talked about earlier. And it was frustrating for sure going, we had a chance to take I think you're right, Curtis, because I think it was 10-7 at the time. And if they were to score a touchdown, they went up 17-7 into half. And, that lead feels good going into half versus the Eagles. So it was frustrating at the time, but, it happens, man. And I'm not going to, nitpick at Bryce Young when he's had one bad play versus this Eagles defense that makes everybody look bad. So I think overall it was a really good game. We just talked about it in depth, and it sucked at the time, but he brought his team back and had a chance at the end.
So one of the things that Bryce Young does pretty well, and that a successful quarterback in the NFL has to do, is use his eyes to manipulate a defense, especially on that back level, right? One thing that he did not do at all on that play was hold the safety with his eyes. Even if he'd have done it for 1 second, even if he had just looked a tick to the left, or if he had looked down, right? If he had changed the eye depth and the level of what the defender thought that Bryce Young was looking at, that defender wouldn't have gotten there. At worst, that was an overthrown ball that ends in an incompletion. At best, he puts a little bit of loft underneath it, and Adam, plops underneath and gets himself a nice little breadbasket. That's a mistake on Bryce Young's part. And it's okay to say that. That was a bad throw, and there was a way to not like ensure that it doesn't happen, but there was a way to mitigate the risk of that throw, and that's by holding the safety. That is exactly like Bryson just said. Those things are going to happen, man. Those things happen to Josh Allen. Those things happen to Pat Mahomes. They happen to Lamar Jackson. Playing quarterback is not some mistake-free thing in the NFL. And I also don't want a quarterback who's so afraid to make mistakes that he doesn't take the shots, because we saw Bryce kind of fall into that kind of mindset as well at times last season. And even to start the first two games this season, I think he had that mindset. I don't mind taking the shots. That was just a misfire. And every now and then, dude, you're going to have a misfire. But if we keep this sustained track record of making big plays in big times, the next thing that I want to see from Bryce Young, I'm not worried about that kind of play. The next thing I want to see from Bryce Young is in phase. I want to see him execute the offense a little bit cleaner and do things a little bit more routinely and take what the defense is giving you on the easy looks, right? That's where I think you can start making people pay with the big shots.
And Ricky made me think of something real quick, Curtis, before you go. After he threw that interception, like, I'm not going to sit here and lie. Like, I was worried that he was going to go back into that, like, okay, I don't want to make a mistake. So
right.
Let's take the check downs. Let's not throw it deep anymore. And he came back and wasn't like that. So almost it's like he showed me something else by throwing that interception and then continuing to play the game at a high level. I was impressed with.
100%. There was a space. I believe it was Jared Feinberg, Panthers wire writer, and he hosted a space later after the game. And he asked a question. He said, so how do you feel about Bryce Young? And, like, when did you get to the determination that you have about Bryce Young? And Bryson, what you just said, it was that play that kind of confirmed for me how I felt about it. And I feel about Bryce Young how I've always felt. He's got it. He's going to be a good player. I needed to see when adversity hit him really hard after these 2 games of good games. That was a critical mistake, man. That could have snowballed. The Eagles could have scored on their first possession out of the second half. We could have been down double digits instead of being up double digits. That could have been catastrophic. He came out the next series after halftime, and he hit Thielen on that really nice double move, that out and up. He hit Thielen with a really nice pass, and he started clicking right away again. That is what I wanted to see. That's what we did see, and that's what I'm riding with, man.
I was in the same boat. I remember tweeting after the pick. I said, I want to see what how he responds in his next drive. And like you guys said, he made up for it. He obviously made up for it on that final drive, which was outstanding. We already talked about that. Let's talk about Jonathon Brooks for a minute before we get into Chuba here. Devastating. Comes in. I think it was maybe his second or third play of the entire game that he was in. Non-contact injury, comes up limping. All know, tears his ACL again. Brutal news. We can touch on that and you react to that. But my question for you guys, and maybe this isn't fair at this point. Maybe I'm going to get heat for this. But do you think, looking back at it now, they should have went with him at that number 2 in the second round and got a running back with knowing that Chuba Hubbard was coming off of an 800, 900 plus yard rushing season this past year?
I'm a firm believer in Chuba Hubbard. I don't think anyone doesn't know that about me, right? When they drafted Jonathon Brooks, I was ecstatic. I think that Jonathon Brooks is a legitimate top 10 type running back talent. Coming off the ACL is obviously a little bit nerve-wracking. I trusted it. Dude, look, Breece Hall, right? Thomas Davis, our own player. We have seen players that have bounced back from situations that are very difficult, and there's no guarantee that he's going to. Was it the wrong pick? I don't know, man. I don't feel fair saying that, to be completely honest, because I think this is a fluke thing that happened. Like, this isn't some sort of, it was a non-contact injury, right? How can we look at any non-contact injury and be like, see, I told you so? It's just one of those awful things about sports, man. And what I won't do, I personally don't want to add in or feed in to the narrative that it was stupid to take a 21-year-old player that showed very high ability at a position that Canales values a lot. And we've seen what the run game can do when Chuba is on his P's and Q's. We've seen what Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery can do in Detroit when you focus on the offensive line and the ground game and how you build an offense off of that success. And I think that the idea works. I hope that Jonathon Brooks comes back and he's great, man. I genuinely do, man.
And we even saw it with the Eagles with Saquon Barkley and Gainwell. Like, Gainwell had his work versus the Panthers as well. I mean, it's important, I think, in this league. A lot of teams are going to it. That 2 running back room, the 2 guys you can rely on. In Carolina, I think they had their doubts about Chuba Hubbard going into the season. I really do. I don't think that they were as confident in Chuba Hubbard as some of us fans were. And, I've said it before, like, I was a Chuba Hubbard doubter, and he's completely proven me wrong, and I'm happy about that because he's a good player on my team now. So, I think they added to that room with hopes of Jonathon Brooks becoming that number 1 running back, and Chuba Hubbard's taken it and ran with it. So he's kind of made it look like a not great pick, but I don't think at this point in time I'm ready to say that it was the wrong pick. I tend to lean more with Ricky. It was an unfortunate situation. Like, nobody can predict that. When Jonathon Brooks was on the field, we saw like the screen pass he caught and then made 2 people miss. Like, he has that ability that no one else in this offense has right now. And if he was healthy, he was going to be involved at a high level and he was going to make a difference on this offense. I wholeheartedly believe that. So I think it's unfortunate. We've seen it on our own team. They keep pounding mantra with Thomas Davis come back and like be a legend for this team, this franchise. So I'm not ready to say it was the wrong pick. Yeah, maybe you could have drafted someone else and they would have made a difference this season, but Jonathon Brooks is going to be a player on this team for a while. And I feel like next year, as long as this man stays healthy, like he is going to be a difference maker. And, this conversation we're having now, next year, he's rushing and we have another 1,000 yard running back room. Like we're going to be laughing at this conversation. So I think, no, at this point in time, I'm not ready to say it was the wrong pick.
Yeah, I can't knock it. I just wanted to ask the question because I know it's been out there. I can't knock it. I wanted this guy. I did. He was pre-draft one of my the top back for me. I thought he was a really good player, and I honestly thought, like Ricky said, I thought he was going to come back stronger than ever this season off the injury, and I honestly thought he'd play sooner. I think Carolina. I know there's some chatter online like, did they rush him back? They did not whatsoever. They took their time on this. He could have probably came back before the bye. It sounded like he was ready before the bye, and they still held him out. So they took this with patience, non-contact. There's nothing you can do about it type situation. It's going to take him a while to get back. It might be another situation where he's not playing. He might not even play next year from what I've seen reported, that this could be another whole year off for him. My biggest fear, though, for him is just the mental game. Like this is going to – It's going to take a toll. He needs to go and consult with Thomas Davis immediately, and like he needs to walk him through, because this is Thomas Davis. I'm sure had his ups and downs too, and wanting to quit, and after the third one and everything else. So he needs someone to wrap their arms, or someone needs to wrap their arms around him and really follow him through this journey, because it's going to be tough. It was tough on him this season. So. That's my biggest fear, but I do think when healthy, he's a hell of a player, and I think he's going to prove that in the season to come.
To that point, Curtis, about like hoping that the mental part, because I agree 1,000%, right? And Lowe here's in the chat, and he says Thomas Davis has already spoken with him. The point that I will bring up too, Jonathon Brooks was at practice today. He was watching the running back reps, and that shows me a really strong mental approach, because I would understand entirely if somebody needed a few days away from the sport after suffering a back-to-back torn ACL. I could 1,000% understand why someone would just need a week off. You know what I mean? And instead, he is there with his teammates. He is still wanting to be around the game. This dude has not lost the love and the desire to be a Carolina Panther running back. And for me, that's the foundation that I think he needs to lean on. Plus, like you said, talk to Thomas Davis. Lowe in the chat says that he already has. He said it in an interview that he's already spoken to Thomas Davis. I imagine he'll hear from a lot of people, because when you come through adversity like this, people want you to know that there is another side, right? And everyone wants to see this kid, Jonathon Brooks, reach his ability, because his ceiling, man, is ridiculously high.
All right, I know we need to touch on the defense, but there's one more topic I want to discuss here on the offensive side for a minute, and this is Dave Canales now as a coach. He said in this I think it was on Monday in a press conference, Bryce Young has saved my bacon a couple times. What are your guys' thoughts on Canales? I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. Play caller, challenges, getting plays in. There was 3 pivotal moments in this last game. You had there was an early third quarter timeout that they took to avoid a delay a game. That was their first timeout. Then they challenged it when Chuba was at the goal line and stopped at the 1. They lost another timeout, so they had 1 remaining timeout. You're down. I think they were down by a score at that point. And then Chuba ran it in on the next play. So it begs the question, was it worth challenging? I wanted him to challenge. I'll just throw it out there. And then you had on the final drive, the delay of game right before the last play on offense, where it was 4th and 4. Bryce Young gets delay of game. It goes to 4th and 9. He misses the pass to Adam Thielen, game over. So it's happened time and time again. Is Canales more to blame? I'm starting to lean that way. The way it sounds like he's starting to make some rookie head coach mistakes of he's just not getting the plays in time, and Bryce getting up to line. Canales usually has at least some sort of motion to try to figure out what the defense is doing. That takes a bit to get going, and then here we are. Bryce Young's trying to clap. Cade Mays is a snap, and here we are, delay a game. So who's to blame in all this? What are your thoughts on Canales and those comments about Bryce Young saving him a time or two on some of these plays as well?
Yeah,
sorry, that's a loaded question.
No, yeah, you're good. I'm glad you brought it up because that's a point I wanted to make. I remember time and time again in this game, I was like, all right, let's go. Come on. You got 5 seconds. You're getting to the line. Like, this is a continued issue with this head coaching staff and Bryce, in games, like they're getting to the line with not enough time. And, you got to get the play call in faster. I'm not sure what's going on. Lapse of communication. Dave Canales, trying to figure out what play he wants to call. I don't know what it is, but that's gotta be fast. You gotta give Bryce time to see what the defense is lined up at, the motion, like you mentioned, Curtis, to see what kind of zone or man they're in, and it happened in a pivotal situation on the final drive of the game for Carolina. You get a delay of game, so I think they've kind of been wishy-washy with it a little bit. Like sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, and it feels like, to me at least, in pivotal situations they're taking much longer to get the play in than they need to, and they need to hurry. They need to make confident decisions. Like, this is the play, let's go, come on, and get out there with at least 15 seconds to get the motion going and things happening, because it doesn't feel like that happens very often. So yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. And then the comment that you mentioned, Curtis, saving my bacon, I like that from Canales. He's not taking credit where Bryce Young deserves it. And for Bryce Young to make changes at the line of play calls, or, this is the read you're supposed to take, but Bryce Young takes another one and it's a first down. Like, for Dave Canales to admit that in the presser, I like that from him. I've been slowly kind of getting back to being impressed with Canales, with the confidence he's instilling in Bryce Young, and the confidence that he has. So, yeah, I like the comment. It showed me a little bit more of what I want to see from Canales.
I think it's also kind of important for us to remember that this was a road game in Philadelphia, and that what we talk about, like with the motions and the pre-snap diagnosis, right? We talked about it on last week's episode. Fangio doesn't give you a whole lot. So when they're trying to flash that eye candy, when they're trying to find a tell, it takes, they're looking for that donut, man. They're looking for something special, looking for something, a little extra that will give them the advantage and to make their good night a great night. But the problem is that Fangio don't give you that, man. Like that's just not part of his thing. But as for the communication, I don't know how loud it was. I wasn't there. Right. But every single person I've ever spoke to that has been to a Philadelphia Eagles home game, it is one of, if not the most raucous and loud environments in the NFL. So from a communication standpoint, I do think you saw him clapping violently at Cade Mays. Cade Mays, Cade and clap. That was just a disaster for me. He was just sitting there. He was like,
have another beer, Ricky.
I'm gonna. Don't you worry. I'm gonna. Especially after that. But no, I think that there's blame to be passed around. I do think that, again, we're making our perceptive opinions off of this without knowing exactly who is to blame. Canales taking the responsibility, though, like Bryson said, means something to me. Remember in game 1 and 2, he mentioned not giving Bryce answers. And then it kind of seemed like he was not worried about having to give the offense answers because he had Andy Dalton around again, right? Oh, I've got my veteran. I don't have to do that. This is the first time I can remember him saying something about Bryce was better than I was. This is the first time I can recall a statement like that. And I just saw the clip on Steve Smith's podcast where he was talking about the vote of confidence from Dan Morgan for Bryce Young. And then you hear today from Dave Canales when he talks about, as a first-time head coach, he's been feeling overwhelmed. And like that was at least my read on it. There's a lot that's going on in this situation. This is still one of those. It's not some sort of easy thing. Bryce's situation last year was a loaded deck of cards. This isn't some walk down Main Street either, man. He's got a first-time head coach that's figuring this stuff out. It's his second year calling plays. He spoke to that. And he says there's so many decisions that have to be made in such a small amount of time. He's cognizant of it, man. And that's what I look for. I want someone who is at least aware of what is going on and is self-aware and self-critical to the point where they can identify shortcomings, because someone that wants to do that also wants to get rid of those shortcomings. Whereas other people might want to pass the buck. I don't think, and there was almost a point in time this season where I thought Dave Canales might be trying to pass the buck a little bit at times.
100%.
And I feel differently right now. And I think that is a growing together situation for Dave Canales and Bryce Young. I truly do, man. And maybe it's the glass half full part of me that I just am by nature, but I truly believe that they have made some sort of connection here where Dave knows I might have been quick to jump the gun. Bryce Young might have had his faults too, but both of us are kind of falling into our own here together. And when you have that timing and symmetry, man, it can be a beautiful thing. And so I like Dave not falling on the sword, but owning up to certain things and taking that onus off of his quarterback.
But we're still week to week, Ricky.
We're week to week. That's where we are. That's where we are with it.
We're not touching that. I'm not getting into that. I don't want to get into that. Unless
so
you
without
want to get
talking
into
about
it.
that, no, I don't. But without talking about that specifically, I think that Dave Canales, and I had this conversation with somebody too, as charismatic as this dude is, and he is, man, he's charismatic. He's got a ton of personality. He seems very genuine. Like, I really do like his personality. I think he's a great human being. He seems like a great man. He talked about the personal connection he's made with all of his coaches and players and all this kind of stuff. He talked about Nick Scott's baby being born, and he knew the pounds and ounces of his newborn child. He seems like a really awesome dude. He is not terrific answering questions. Like, he's just not a terrific question answerer. And I think a lot of it is tiptoeing that balance beam, right? Like, imagine he's walking on a candy cane and he's trying to stay up straight, right? It's tough. That's a thin little rail, right? And he's trying so hard to balance the being candid and being honest with also not giving too much away and being personal. Like, that is a very tough balance. And I think once he figures that out, which a little free advice just from a stupid idiot in his home office doing a podcast, just stop trying to like put it all together perfectly, man. Like, just find one way of doing it, stick with it. Like, don't try to tell everyone the honest truth. You know what I mean? If you want to lie. If you want to be honest, be totally honest, dude. When you try to mix those worlds, that's when you end up with like a Jay-Z Linkin Park album instead of just the Black Album, you know?
All right, let's talk about the defense, because we literally have spent an hour talking about the offense here. Bryce has got a bedtime. He's gonna be ripping our heads off here.
I'm good tonight. Hey, these resolution celebratory L's. I gotta go grab another one once we take our break. I might be a little late getting back, but these things are hitting.
That resolution had like 4 S's in it. He is definitely having a good time.
Yeah, they're good.
Let's talk about the defense, because I thought they played pretty damn well this game, and they have played well these last couple of weeks, considering what they did earlier in the year. And this defense, we've been part of it, have harped on them all season long. And I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on their overall play this weekend against one of, I would say, probably top 5 offenses in the NFL right now, the Eagles. So what were your guys' thoughts on both them, holding? I mean, they did. I guess they didn't hold Barkley. Barkley's still at 100+ yards, so disregard that. But what were your thoughts of them going up against this Eagles team?
Yeah, I think to start, the Eagles did more to hurt themselves in regards to not continuing to rely on Saquon Barkley than the Panthers defense did to stop them. There were times I was sitting on the couch with my wife's cousin, the Eagles fan, and we're like, why are they not running Saquon here? Like, what is going on? Time and time again, they went away from Saquon. He probably could have had 200 yards versus his defense, because it felt like every time he touched the ball, he went for 10+ yards. Now, in regards to the secondary, the pass defense, they did a really good job on Jalen Hurts, and I don't know if some of it was him being timid. It kind of felt like that at times, where he didn't really want to throw the ball. There was that play where he slid, like, instead of throwing the ball away, and it resulted in a sack. Like, some questionable plays from Jalen Hurts, but overall, the defense, when they needed a stop, they got one, and they gave their team a chance. Like Ricky mentioned earlier, coming out of half, the defense could have gave up a touchdown and went down by double digits, and they didn't. So I liked that the defense, when you absolutely had to have it, they gave it to you, and you got it. One stat that I saw on Twitter that I was not aware of, or X, whatever the name of it is, that I was not aware of before seeing this, was that the Panthers are tied for third in sacks since week 10 with 15, which is crazy to me because we've been talking all year about how this team, like, no pressure on the quarterback,
It's that Wanham effect.
Yeah, DJ Wanham came back and turned his defensive line around, and it just sucks knowing that, like, if Derek Brown was out there, what would this defensive line look like right now with Ashawn and Derek Brown and Clowney and DJ Wanham? I think they'd be a pretty formidable force in the run game.
Mason Graham.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't tend to lean that way myself, but yeah, I mean, I think they'd be a lot better. I mean, Derek Brown's one of the best in the league. We all know that. So it sucks we lose him early on in the season, and we can't see him with this team as it's structured right now. So overall, I was pleased with the defense. I don't really think you can ask much more from this group as a whole. And they gave their team a chance. I'm happy with that.
You can't ask for much more from this defense. I'd agree with that entirely. What the Eagles need to be asking for is for Jalen Hurts to throw the damn ball.
Yeah.
If you're going to call the pass plays that often, which Bryson's nailed it, hammer on the head of the nail, you run the football, man. Like, you say we held Saquon Barkley, he averaged something crazy, like 7-something yards per carry, right? If you just keep handing him the ball, make this Panthers run defense that is hemorrhaging yards, make them prove that they can stop the world's best running back, right? And I mean, no disrespect to Derrick Henry when I say that, but Saquon Barkley is playing at a unreal level right now. Jalen Hurts was hesitant on Sunday. And, we talked about it last week, guys. The pressure percentages and then the sack percentages, the sack rate for this offensive line that the Eagles give him all the time in the world. And there is a plethora of plays you could pluck from the all 22 of this past Sunday. The Panthers don't generate pressure, dude. And they weren't getting pressure on Jalen Hurts. He had a lot of comfortable time. Like, he could have read the Philadelphia newspaper there a couple of times over. And instead he chose to just kind of bounce around and he put himself in precarious situations. And I know that there is some sort of gripe happening right now with him and Arthur Brown Jr., AJ Brown. I don't know if that played a part in it. It seems really petty and stupid to let that leak onto a football field, but he didn't throw the ball when he had opportunities, man. And you're talking about that being relatively uncharacteristic because their offense relies on explosives. We talked about that too. They don't do a lot of underneath stuff. They don't do a lot of quick pass concepts. They rely on that threat of Saquon Barkley, and they rely on the deep shots by Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And he was hesitant to take them. What I will say about this defense, Josie Jewell continues to show up, man. Like, yeah, Bryson, pat yourself on the back while you're giving a round of applause for Josie.
Number 47, baby, the outlaw.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man,
jersey at this rate,
he's getting right there, damn close to getting 47 quarterback pressures this year. I mean, that dude is starting to become a disruptor from the second level, and some of it is fortuitous. But you know what, man? That's also the sign of a good ball player, is when you're given an opportunity, you take it and you finish it. And he's done that the past handful of weeks. So I wanted to shout him out. Jaden Crumity, he popped up a couple different times as well, like not in like a major way, but he popped up, and that's kind of fun because he's a 6th-round rookie. This defense, it's got a couple of things that you could talk about, and we get Derek Brown back next year. That's something we're not even thinking about with this defense. So I know we've got the super chat here from Mike Hollinger. Curtis, if we want to get into that, we can, since it's related to defense somehow.
Well, I wanted to jump in here quick, and then we'll get to that. Just my take on the defense, because I don't think you guys are giving them enough credit, because I felt like J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson kind of strapped those wide receivers a little bit. And I'm talking seatbelt. we're not getting into. Don't be taking that dirty, but like they had those guys locked down. They really did. I thought JC had a hell of a game. I thought Mike Jackson had a couple really good pass breakups. Xavier Woods made a couple nice tackles in open field. I think there was one where I think it was Devontae Smith had a kind of like a drag route. He caught it, and I thought he was going to score on it, and Xavier Woods held him. So there was plays and moments in those games where I thought the defense came up big. And just one guy in particular I want to shout out. I think A'Shawn Robinson has really come into his own for this defense over the last couple of weeks. And he's just playing. I don't know what has gotten into him. I don't know if it's Wanham out there with him, and that's really helped. But I feel like he has made some strides over the last couple of weeks. Josie Jewell again comes to mind. He's playing well. I'll eat crow on it. I'll keep eating crow on it every week. But he's been playing well. And then J.C. Horn, I just pray. We were talking about it before we got on here. He plays this weekend. We'll get into that later on too. But I know he's day-to-day right now, but they really need him this weekend if they going up against CeeDee Lamb. That's going to be a tough matchup. So, I thought the defense played. I do agree with you guys. They were idiotic for not running the ball early and often on this Panthers defense. Saquon was getting 8-9 yards a crack when he had the ball. I mean, it was bad. So they didn't take advantage of that. I don't know what their game plan was. I don't know what Kellen Moore was thinking for the Eagles, but that should have been. I mean, I would have just fed Saquon, honestly, and I think you would have scored. You would have scored at ease on this defense. They can't stop the run. And Derek Brown, that hurts, but they do need a true nose tackle. They don't got one, and I think that's hurting. And we'll see if they address that this offseason, because it's watch them week in and week out. And it's 100+ every time a running back's out there on an opposing team. And they got Dowdle coming. I mean, that guy's coming into his own too for Dallas right now. So I'm jumping ahead here. But anyway.
What do they call a donut in Philadelphia? Because I feel like that's what Kellen Moore was having on the sideline over there at times. like you had the original thing.
Well, what was with Barkley? What was with Barkley not coming in like the first couple plays? Does anyone know? It was an equipment issue or something? That was odd to me.
It looked like, because he was like readjusting his chest pads. It looked like. So I don't know if something popped off there. But the one thing that I'll say about the strap from and pause on that again, the seatbelt strap from the secondary with these receivers. You watch the all 22, man. They had some people open, like there was open players on that field, and that's where I go back with the Jalen Hurts thing. That it was a little bit uncharacteristic, or just weird. Maybe not even uncharacteristic, because I don't watch enough of Jalen Hurts to be completely fair and honest to know exactly what his tendencies are. But he passed up on some opportunities, some shots that I think that most quarterbacks in the NFL would take. And I thought Kellen Moore did have designs that had people open. It ran open relatively often. Not like, it wasn't like, dude, there was just like people galloping across open spaces. But there were some real opportunities to make throws that, a good quarterback like a Bryce Young might have made. But I do think that you're right, though, that there were some plays coming downhill from the Panthers secondary that were really nice too, because they limited the big plays. They didn't let the extra yardage. And we talked about the Eagles don't get a ton of yak, but they made sure of that too. So I do think that the secondary did nice there, but I think they got beat a few times that we never saw make any kind of consequential impact, because Jalen Hurts decided to, do the salsa back there in the pocket as opposed to throwing the football.
All right, I want to address this comment here quick, because I agree with this, and maybe I'm off base on this, but Black and Blue here says, if I can pull this up, if it stops, there we go. DJ Johnson has been very disruptive. I'm not seeing that. I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but there was a couple plays I remember. I'm like, oh my God, what is he doing on that play? This past week particularly. So I'm not seeing that from him. Do you guys see 52 making plays out there? I don't.
I do in the run game. I mean, he
Yep.
was going up against Lane Johnson this past weekend, and he bullied Lane Johnson on a couple of plays. Like on a couple of the few plays where the run game didn't go for 7-8+ yards, DJ Johnson was setting that edge and bullying one of the best right tackles in the NFL. So I think not so much in pass rush, but when you are out there on the edge and you're trying to set it for a run play, DJ Johnson has been doing that pretty consistently, I would say, game in and game out for this defense.
Maybe I was looking at the wrong 52.
His past 3 games have been pretty special on run defense, setting the edge. As far as disruptive, I would probably disagree with that. Where I think that he has done terrific, there was at least 2 plays that I can recall from Sunday where he not only shed the block from Lane Johnson, but got inside on a double block, on a combo block, and made the tackle on an outside run. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to do with a guy like Lane Johnson being your primary blocker. And then you have another hog molly that comes over just to find action to give you business too. And you still make the tackle on Saquon Barkley. Like it's relatively impressive stuff. And he had a play again like that last week as well, where he completely held up his block. And that's the thing. It's setting the edge, right? He's not being over aggressive, because that's what a lot of offenses will key in on too. If you got a guy who doesn't do that responsibility, right? And maybe part of that is because DJ Johnson really doesn't have a pass rush repertoire. Maybe this is just what he does, and this is what he's going to be. And I'm not trying to be shitty or mean when I say that, but his pass rush is still not there. So that's where I would disagree with the disruptive part. But when he can blow a play up, a rushing play, he has absolutely shown that he has the physicality and strength to do that. And also the awareness, man, of not overextending and going for it.
All right, we got to get to, I apologize, Mike Hollinger. This is overdue. 199. We do appreciate it. He says, if we get
Mike.
top 5 pick, cheers. I finished my beer for you.
Oh, he housed it. Look at him.
So if we get a top 5 pick, are we going offense, defense? And I remember I sent something out on our account earlier this week. I think we're at pick 4. Yeah, we're at pick 4. So it's Giants, Raiders, Patriots, Panthers right now. Obviously, things can change, and everyone. There's times where I'm like, I put in a tweet and I'm trying to like cover all my bases because I know all the jackasses are gonna be like, well, they're gonna get another win here, so I try to put that in, and I still get fucking flack. So I'm like, you can't win sometimes. But what do you guys think about them at 4 right now? Would you want Bryson? I kind of see where you're leaning. I'm curious to see what you said because I mentioned Mason Graham, and you're like, yeah, that's not kind of what I'm feeling. Where are you at? If they picked 4 right now, let's say the season ended today, who are we taking? Or where are you going? Offense, defense? You don't even have to give me a guy. Just start going.
No, I'll give you a guy. I think we've talked about getting Derek Brown back and the difference that can make on this defensive line. Adding a guy like Mason Graham, yeah, I mean, that would be spectacular, having a tandem of Mason Graham and Derek Brown. But I'm more interested in getting Bryce Young weapons and seeing this growth that we've seen from Bryce continuing to go forward, because the best quarterbacks in the league have those weapons. I mean, besides Mahomes, like Joe Burrow has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Lamar Jackson's got Zay Jones, and they took our number 1 wide receiver that isn't really playing there, but he's got Mark Andrews, he's got Derrick Henry. Like, these quarterbacks have weapons, and Bryce Young doesn't really have a whole lot right now outside of Chuba Hubbard on this offense. So I'm adding a guy, which I don't think the Panthers are going to be picking in the top 5. They're going to win a couple more games this year. I wholeheartedly believe that with the way they're playing right now, especially coming up this weekend. But I think adding a guy like Ted McMillan, Luther Burden, or even Travis Hunter, if they do end up picking earlier in the draft and they don't end up winning some of these games that I think they're going to win, teams at the top of the draft usually go quarterback. And you have teams like the Giants, the Raiders that need quarterbacks. So Travis Hunter could fall, and you have a guy that has versatility on defense and an offense. You could add some of those guys. And I think giving Bryce a weapon that is a legitimate number one wide receiver that is a game changer that he doesn't have right now. Maybe Xavier Legette becomes that at some point, but right now he's not. I think you could see a different level of Bryce Young that we haven't seen yet because he doesn't have those weapons, that yak ability that a lot of these guys have in the NFL that are the top tier quarterbacks. So I'm offense, man, and I'm going to be that way until draft day. I think Curtis and I are planning a trip to this NFL draft again in Green Bay, I believe, right, Curtis?
Amen.
He's going to show me the ropes
My
out there in
country
Wisconsin.
over there.
It's like stomping grounds.
I'm going to be praying myself for wide receiver. That's me, though.
I think if we end up 3, I think we're drafting offense and defense. If you're at 3, I think you're taking Travis Hunter because I think Bryson is correct that I'm not sure that either quarterback is necessarily worth the first or second overall pick, but the teams that will be picking first and second have made it abundantly clear that they don't have a quarterback. Like they don't have a quarterback. The Raiders do not have a quarterback. I know Panther Bo, I am very sorry for saying this because I know who you are at your heart. Aiden O'Connell is not the one, man. I don't think that he's the guy that's going to take the Raiders to the promised land. The Giants, I mean, look, dude, you're talking about they got Drew Lock and what's his DeVito over there. It's going to have to start this week because Drew Lock hurt himself.
Tommy Cutlets.
Yeah, Tommy Cutlets. So like, for crying out loud, man, you know that's a problem. Like, isn't that the guy that does the Instagram videos where he just throws sandwiches into a frying pan or something like that? Like, I think that you gotta expect quarterback 1 and 2. But if we are in the game for Travis Hunter, that's the one that I don't have questions about. And the reason for that is because I think that he's special on both sides of the ball. And I think you figure that out once you got him in house. But I truly do believe that his physical abilities, his size, his length, his instincts, his speed, man, and his reactionary speed are special things. And he's shown really good hands as a receiver as well. Technique on the offensive side can be refined, but dude, you do that in the NFL, right? If we're looking at 4 or 5, I think that it's Graham or Carter. And I have a hard time saying that they go Tet or anything else because I just think that Graham or Carter make a lot of sense for what this team lacks. Their run defense is a significant problem, especially if they move out of the 3-4, if they move away from Ejiro Evero. I think that they will be even more intrigued with Graham because I think you would pair Graham and Derek Brown right next to each other, and neither one of them have to play a true 0. They could play a little bit of shade, a little bit of 2-eye type technique, right? Derek Brown, that's what he's played. 2-eye and 3 technique is the majority of what he's played. He's played some 0. He's played a little shade. He's even played out at 5. But once you look at Jadeveon Clowney and DJ Johnson, those are edge-setting edges. So that's why Carter also makes a lot of sense because he brings a skill set. And I think he can play a little off-ball too, which I think we're still in need of. And he's just one of those hybrid type of players that you put him in the football game and he makes football plays. And I am a big fan of players that do that, right? Like it doesn't really matter what you designate them at, what you classify them as. They're football players, man, and they're damn good at it. So I don't think you could go wrong, man, with Graham, Carter, or Travis Hunter. Once you move off of that, I love Tet McMillan, and I'm also a huge Luther Burden fan. I'm going to be completely honest here. I am probably higher on Luther Burden than most people are, and the appeal of trading down, it moves me a little bit, man, if you can get a little bit of extra.
Yeah, if I'm a betting man and they're sitting there at 4 or 5 or wherever they're at, not in the top 3, I think Carter's the pick right now. If I had to bet on it, I think as fans we're higher on Graham than they would be over Carter. I really think they're desperate for like an elite edge rusher. So if I had to guess at this point, I think Carter pick. But I mean, if somehow Travis Hunter was there at 4, if they had to get him at 3, I do not think you can pass that guy up. I think he's going to be a special player in this league, generational type in my mind of how the way he can play. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can play wide receiver at a very high level, and then you could even maybe sub package him in at corner and some spots. Like that's the type of that's fucking rare. It's very rare in the league. So I think he's a special talent. Again, I don't think I don't think they'll be in the top 3. I think they're gonna get a win or 2 more this season, and that's gonna bump them up and I think Edgar had pointed this out. He's like, man, there's a lot of bad teams. There's a lot of. You win one game and you're at pick 8. Like that's the way it is. So there's just a lot of bad teams this year, a lot of injuries. So and I feel like every time the Panther, this always happens where they get the short end of the stick when they are in this spot. So a 1 or 2 wins can really adjust where they're at, and I think that'll change a lot going forward. But I do think. I like any 3 of those. I would not complain with any of 3 of those guys. I think they would be impactful players out of the gate and will need, because Carolina's got a lot of needs. Whether I know they're playing, Bryce Young's playing well now, but they have a lot of holes to fill on this team. So any 3 of those guys would make a difference.
I think that what I saw too with Jalen Carter and the impact that he had in this game against us. And I'm not saying that Graham is by any means Jalen Carter. They're physically different statures. But from a disruption standpoint, that interior disruption, man, it benefits the outside pass rush a lot as well. If you could get that quarterback to bail left or right, you're making the job easier on those outside edge rushers. And I think that with the edge rushers, it doesn't necessarily work the same, to the same extent. Because you can get kind of mitigated. They can push you out wide, right? The splits on the offensive line can even change. There are kind of ways to do that. But that interior pressure, man, Jalen Carter, Aaron Donald, we've seen it. Christian Wilkins, like Dexter Lawrence. We have seen recently that interior pressure has become a significant force in the NFL with the way the defenses are playing right now.
Yeah, it's not gonna lie. Graham and DB in the middle. It would be fun. It would be fun to watch, man.
Not really safe for work,
Yeah, and to be clear, I would not be mad with that whatsoever.
Right.
I prefer wide receiver, but if they go Graham or Abdul Carter, might have a little PTSD from a Penn State edge rusher in Yetur Gross-Matos, who also just won NFC Defensive Player of the Week, having 3 sacks last weekend. But that's crazy. But he wasn't great in Carolina. I wouldn't be mad. I think, like Curtis mentioned, there's a lot of holes in this team. Maybe they sign T. Higgins, maybe they sign a wide receiver in free agency, and then they go defense in the draft. Mason Graham is an outstanding player. He is. I think he's a consensus top 5 pick in this draft. Abdul Carter, he's up there as well. So wouldn't be mad, but in my mind, I think adding a weapon for Bryce Young that's legitimate number 1, like Travis Hunter or Ted McMillan, I think that changes things for Bryce in this offense.
I agree with that too, though. I really do. I don't want to make it sound like I'm all for just the defense, because I really do love the idea of being able to possibly get a guy like Luther Burden towards the 10 area, right? That if you could trade back and
I think they need to go BPA.
Yeah, I would too, man. BPA works, but
I think they can go BPA.
That's where you really run into a question, though, is because then you're really relying on your evaluations to truly tell you the BPA, like the best player available. And I think that the grading difference between the Graham and the Carter conversation is extremely interesting, because I think they're going to grade out very closely. I really do, man. I think that Graham has the sure thing aspect of him. Carter has this ceiling that is ridiculous.
And they love ceiling players. They do. That's the Panther way. It really is. That seems like, at least. Let's get to Alex here quick. He had also a super chat. We appreciate it. Alex and Nobody, previously Kitty Lindenfeld. This guy, $4.99.
Great name.
Commission for everyone except for Curtis again. Yeah, I get it. Jacked up the bat. Here we go.
Poor Curdy.
Appreciate it, Alex. You know what, Alex? I'm going to pull this up for next episode, because I believe out of all of us, I am probably one of the top ones to hit on my bets out of all 3 of us. I think Bryson's honestly in last. So for me to get all this shit, Alex, these past couple of weeks, Bryson has been on recently, but if you take the overall scope of this whole year,
I started rough to begin the year.
Yeah. I think I'm up there.
I need to see those numbers. Because I feel like I'm not doing bad either. I think I've only had like 2
It's
misses.
either me or you, I think, at the top. It's one or the other.
I've been okay.
So Alex is harping on me a little bit, so I gotta take he tries.
But like for the past 6 weeks, I think I've only missed once. So like I started.
You've been on one. You've been on one.
I started one, but I turned it on.
I feel like you started hitting when you were starting to predict scores on the fucking head.
Oh Christ, he called you Andy Dalton. That's rough.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Look, here's the thing about Alex too, though. This dude is Southern by nature, right? He's a North Carolinian, but now he's up there in the Big Apple, so he just feels like he has to talk shit to all of us Southerners that are still here. He's
got a big head.
Take everything he says with a nice big old grain of salt. You know, the kind of salt they throw on bagels and shit up there.
One thing we can't dismiss this because this guy we can't dodge the heat on this dude because the last 2 weeks, and we didn't talk about it yet, so we'll talk about it quick and then we'll take a break here because I know we're getting long. Eddie Pinheiro. Again, the guy misses an extra point this past weekend. He missed 2 field goals in the game prior, and I am shocked. Maybe they're not. I feel like we would know this at this point. I am shocked they're not bringing in competition. I really am. I'm not confident in him at all at any size of the field. I don't care if it's a 36-yarder. I don't care if it's a 40-yarder. Every time he kicks it, I am nervous at this point. I know I was kind of sided with Eddie this past season and even in training camp. But, man, I mean, this is to the point where it is time to bring someone in and put some heat on him. And I know I think Bryson tweeted. Didn't you tweet something about a Chiefs kicker this past week? Yeah. Matthew Wright, is that the guy?
Yeah, Matt Wright.
Yeah.
Doinked one in for a win.
That's right.
Yeah, I thought you were going to eat your words on that. You almost missed that shit.
No.
But anyway, what are you guys' thoughts on Eddie? Because he's making me real nervous.
Yeah, to be fair, we did that before he doinked it in. Okay. But yeah, I mean, Matthew Wright was here in Carolina in I think last season or the season before. Look, Eddie Pinheiro is that's another hole that the Carolina Panthers have to address. He's not a good kicker. He's not. And I don't know if you remember, Curtis, but I used to be a huge supporter of Eddie Pinheiro when he started his career in Carolina. But I've seen on the field, like, result after result after result, like, when you're hampering your offense and you're not able to kick it from 50 plus, like with ease in the NFL, you have to be able to do that. Like most kickers can. This is the highest level of the sport that you can get to. And when you're not able to do that, your offense is, down a tick because, they think they got to get it closer. And unfortunately, other teams are kicking it. We saw it with the Bucs, like Chase McLaughlin, like hitting the kick he did. And on the other sideline, our kicker is not going to be able to make that. So unfortunately, this has to be addressed. And I agree with you, Curtis. I think they should bring someone in for competition. Bring Mebus back. I think he's sitting at home on the couch. Like, he's not on anybody's practice squad or anything like that. He's probably getting a little bit thicker right now. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm not hating on that because I'm a thick man myself. So, I think Pinheiro is struggling. And Curtis, you talk about it all the time. It's a mental game for these kickers. And he is going through some shit right now. And he just doesn't have the leg strength to be kicking these long field goals. It's the opposite of Joey Sly, what we saw in Carolina years ago. Like, he could hit the 60-yarders, but he couldn't hit the 30, the 20, the 40-yarders. And Pinheiro is the complete opposite. And it is a hole in this team. They need to address it. Hopefully they will this offseason. And if I was the GM or the head coach, I would be bringing someone in tomorrow to provide some competition to that kicker.
Well, yeah, make some movement, do some competition. Like, I don't know. I feel like they're settling at this position right now. And it's weird because I got the opposite feeling from Canales in the offseason. Like, he was going to let Mevis ride this thing out. And then all of a sudden we're like 2 weeks into training camp. He's like, all right, Eddie's the guy. and like didn't even give Mevis a chance the rest of the preseason. So I don't know. I just there's a weird vibe there from me with Canales and Eddie. I don't know. I feel like they're settling at this point with him.
And not to even mention the kickoffs, like Eddie Pinheiro, like a couple of times this season, a handful of times this season, like it's not getting to the landing zone or whatever the fuck they want to call it now. Like doesn't have enough leg to get it there, and he kicks it out of bounds, or he doesn't get it to the right zone. So they start on the 40-yard line, and that hampers your team even more with a defense that's struggling. So, it's continued issues with him, man. And I know Ricky's about to go in, so I'm gonna let this man preach right now.
No, I'm not gonna do it. I look, man, I won't even do it. What I want to point out that Lowe, I love this nickname that he put up, and it's been on the screen for a minute, Eddie Pinono, because that's exactly what you feel like when anytime you see them trot when you see them trotting him out, which by the way, I need him to take that number 4 off, right? Like I can't wear that jersey no more. Like
Amen.
I understand that John Casey had a major Pinheiro moment with the kicking the ball out of bounds in the Super Bowl that cost us dearly, but John Casey is a Panthers legend. Take that jersey off.
He will never be forgotten for that miss, though. I'm sorry.
No, never. No, I get it. I get it. And I don't even blame.
I don't care what he did up to that point. I don't give a shit what he did.
But
no, he's a legend. I'm pushing back on that. He is a Panthers
I'm with
legend.
you. He's a legend. But one thing that he is not is he's not Eddie Pinheiro, and I need Eddie Pinheiro to take that jersey off. And I will go a little bit further. I don't give a shit what number is on the jersey. I don't want him wearing a Panthers jersey. This dude should not have been our kicker out of camp. I don't care about being the most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL when you've only kicked in non-pressure situations to make those kicks, and every pressure situation you are faced with, you miss. You lost your job in Chicago because of this exact same thing. We praise Dave Canales for the aggressiveness going forward on 4th down recently. You know why else he thinks he has to go forward on 4th down? Because he doesn't trust his kicker to kick the football. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, when you are a specialist, and we're talking about a specialist, right? We're talking about practice. like that's what I feel like. I feel like Allen Iverson up here right now trying to explain why I hate the kicking element in football so much, because this dude literally is taking points off the board because he wanted to wear a crochet shirt in South Beach for a little bit longer instead of coming down here and putting in
I knew that was coming.
But he wanted to be able to come out here and say, hey, look, like I got the statistics. Like, I don't really know what to tell you. You know what I mean? You see this big ass diamond in my ear. Like this diamond, like, would you wear this diamond if you weren't some terrific kicker? Man, shut the hell up. I'm sorry, dude. I know that I am taking this almost in a very personal way, but I don't like Eddie Pinheiro. I just don't. And I don't care if it's completely for no good reason. I don't care if it's wrong. I don't like him. I don't trust him. I don't want him to be my kicker. I also think that Bryson should get an advertisement deal with the beer that he's drinking, because the rant that he went on about how he is very okay with getting thicker on the couch because he's a thick man himself. I think that was glorious and beautiful, and love is love. So I really want him to get a deal out of that.
Victory Brewing, holler at me.
Yeah. Victory Brewing, please call Bryson, because that segment right there is liquid gold. If you make liquid gold, he's giving you.
He's getting a little liquid courage there.
Yeah. It was phenomenal, and I also just don't disagree with him. I would literally take just about anybody who's sitting on their couch. Matthew Wright, sure, yeah, wasn't he a London legend too? Didn't he win the game for them in London for the Jaguars a couple years ago?
Yep.
I seem to remember being drunk at 9 a.m. and watching that. So I mean, there is all kinds of people that I would take. I would have taken a chance on who was the kid that was kicking for the Jets that I was trying to get everyone to Austin Seibert. Yeah. I wanted so badly for them to sign him. And you know what? He had a terrific run with the Washington Commanders this year before he was injured. He was probably the league's best kicker for a stretch. Kickers are readily available. What you don't do is sit on one that has never proven to be anything in moments that matter. When you have a team that is struggling to get over the hump to win football games, the one thing you don't continue on is a specialist that will lose you football games.
And the funniest thing about all of this, is that this was a kicker that was holding out in training camp to get more money. That is hilarious to me.
Right.
That is so funny to me. This man was holding out because he thought He was at a high enough level to hold out for more money.
You know what?
Get
Also,
this
that
man
tells
off
me
my team. Get this man off my team.
I think he looked at the Panthers handing out the money that they handed out in the past and their ineptitude from the front office and said, "Hey, look, they'll buckle.
Yep.
They'll give it to me.
Yep.
I could put the screws to them." But you know what? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give credit again here to Dan the man. No. Come in. Like show face at least in the building. Like, I'm not Scott Fitterer, right? Like, this isn't the thing that you think it is anymore. Come in here, prove it, play well, and we might pay you. I can promise you what's not going to happen now. That dude isn't going to get another paycheck from the Carolina Panthers at the end of this year. I don't think there's any way they retain this kicker. And if they do, I don't know, man. Maybe that's when we fucking turn into a, Green Bay Packers or Indianapolis Colts podcast or something.
Protest on Main Street. But what frustrates me the most too is there's other teams that have kickers that have missed, and they're bringing in guys and switching them out, and not doing that, man. They're settling right now, and it drives me nuts. That's what drives me nuts. All right, let's take a break. We've talked an hour and a half about this. We got about 500 plus listening. If you do not subscribe to our Panthers on Tap YouTube channel, please do that right now. We're going to take a 30-second break here. We'll come right back. We're going to get into statistically speaking with the Cowboys game coming up this weekend. We'll also talk bets, predictions. Stay tuned for that. We will be right back after this break. Exciting news, Panther fans. I'm thrilled to announce our partnership with BetStamp and Sign Up Expert, opening up an incredible opportunity for you to join sportsbooks in your area to get the best odds and new user offers. Head over to our dedicated page at signupexpert.com/Panthers to explore a selection of sportsbooks tailored to your region, each with unique offerings. If you're ready to take sports betting to the next level and show some love to Panthers on Tap, I highly recommend signing up for your next sportsbook through our Sign Up Expert link. All right, I just want to plug again. Please, if you guys are listening right now, you're on YouTube, just hit that subscribe button. If you have an account, we would appreciate it. I'm going to let you guys into a little insight since they are not getting back. So when we hit that ad, which is hilarious to me, when we do that 30-second ad, both of these guys, and I've done it before too, they go on a dead sprint either to go take a piss or go get more beer. So it's hilarious every time that 30-second break is our time to go. And there goes Ricky. He's back. So I was just telling, I was giving them the insight of when we do a break, it's like a full-on sprint, either get alcohol or we got to take a piss. I mean, that's just what it is.
The bathroom itself is like 7 seconds down the hall. So I got like a 14-second already built in, right? So I'm trying my hardest to make that 30-second shake.
Sorry, gentlemen. Yeah, I had to pee and then I had to grab another beer. So my bad.
And you are now tapped back into the most forthcoming Carolina Panthers podcast you will ever listen to.
Amen.
All right, let's get into it. I love this, Ricky. I love this.
I went for the worst, most humiliating picture I could find that also brought a little bit of cheer to all of our hearts as we go through this segment. First of all, I would like to start off by just admitting to everybody that I hate the Dallas Cowboys with a passion. And it is not for any real reason. I just don't like them. I don't like how so many people like them. I don't like the arrogance of them. And I don't like how every time that I've gone to a Carolina Panthers game in Carolina against the Dallas Cowboys, I am outnumbered 7-1 by shit-ass navy and silver jerseys. So I did all of this with the intention of getting under the skin of Dallas Cowgirls fans. Now, let's talk about something else that gets under the skin of Dallas Cowgirls fans. Their offense, 20.6 points per game. That's 21st in the league. 322.6 yards per game. That's good for 20th. 231.4 pass yards per game. That's an 11th best in the league mark. 91.2 rushing yards per game. That's 28. From an efficiency standpoint, negative 0.18 expected points added per pass. That is 27th in the league. Negative 0.15 expected points added per rush. That is tied for 29th. This is not a well-oiled machine on the offensive side. And some of those numbers began with Dak Prescott, the $160 million man. And now it has whittled down to Cooper Rush, which is a really fun thing for the Panthers. 22 offensive touchdowns. That's 29th in the league. They don't score a lot of touchdowns, man. They're not very good. 54 or 64.4% of the time. I'm sorry. I am about to start my third beer. 64.4% of the time they are throwing the ball. That is fourth most in the NFL. I will go straight into Curtis. If you'll go straight into the next one, I could do it. Look at that. I got it. If you'll just move my big fat head so that I can see. Rico Dowdle is the guy in the first picture. CeeDee Lamb right there in the middle. And then Zach Martin being helped off the field for the third. We'll talk about that a bit. Offensive keys to this game, in my opinion. 28 rushes of 10-plus yards for the Dallas Cowboys rushing offense. That's tied for 28. Now, Curtis, you talked about it earlier. Rico Dowdle is starting to find a little bit of rhythm and is looking like their lead back, and they're starting to actually lean into that a little bit more. They've stopped with the Ezekiel Elliott experiment. I don't know what was going on with that, why they thought that they needed to give the Ewok a second chance, but it wasn't working out well for them.
Cheeseburger Eddie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he clearly, like, the cereal got to him, right? 1.02 yards before contact per attempt. That is 26th in the league. 4 rushing touchdowns is dead last. This is not a prolific rushing attack. Now, that doesn't mean that Rico Dowdle can't find some work against this Carolina Panthers defense, but this offensive line for the Cowboys is a huge story as well. 1,673 team yards after catch. That is 12th in the league. Cooper Rush, though, averages 5.5 yards per attempt. That's 31st in the league. So that yak becomes almost imperative for any kind of success in the passing game. And I'm going to tell you, Cooper, when we talk about a quarterback being sped up or a quarterback seeming timid or not trusting what he is seeing on the field and not trusting his line, that is exactly what I've seen from Cooper Rush the past few games. I think that he is well aware that they lost Zach Martin. They also just lost Cooper Beebe, their center, a guy that I was extremely high on, a rookie out of Kansas State. And I think that is causing significant problems. They've allowed 33 sacks. That's 19th in the league on 162 quarterback pressures. That's tied for 17th. To start the year, this was a terrific offensive line unit. Their rookie, Tyler Guyton, was even playing terrific. He actually was benched last week for the Bengals game in favor of another player. So they have deteriorated completely. Zach Martin is on the IR. Cooper Beebe suffered a concussion in week 14. His status will be determined, but it is fortuitous for the Carolina Panthers that their game was a Monday night game and they play on Sunday. So it is a shorter week for him to clear that concussion protocol. And I am telling you what, man, if they're down Zach Martin and Cooper Beebe, that is a significant development for the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion.
What I want to see out of this defense, which probably won't happen, just based off of their injuries and what you're showing us here, I want them to press the shit out of this team and just send blitzes and put pressure on Cooper Rush and see what these guys can do against JC if he's healthy, pressing CeeDee Lamb and make some of these other guys beat you. And I would bet money on that it would be successful. I really do, because I think Cooper Rush, when you get him and he's off his what they're set out to do, and take him off of his pedestal a little bit, I think you're going to create problems. And you saw him on Monday night. If you watched that game, he threw a couple picks in there. When he gets off kiltered a little bit and you send some pressure, and I feel like some of these guys, I think Mike Jackson can hold his own and JC Horn can press-wise. I feel like that's going to bode well for them if they do that. Now, are they going to do that? Probably not. They'll do the exact opposite, of course. But I think that would bode well for them. And with them down, Zach Martin, massive, their center potentially out on this game, more than likely. Like that's huge. Like I said, I'm worried about Dowdle. I think Dowdle is starting to come on for this team, and he's taking some chunk runs, and I think he's gonna, play. If I'm Dallas, I'm running the ball down Carolina's throat.
Yeah, they're gonna.
And really another guy we haven't mentioned is Turpin. Scares me. Turpin has got some burst. He's a speedy dude. He's a gadget player for Dallas. They kind of use him in that like Debo-esque role. And that's a guy you got to beat. Carolina in this game has to be on their tackling. Like they've had some games where they miss a lot of tackles. You miss a tackle against Turpin, and he's going to take one of the house. He is. He's a quick dude. So,
Turpin almost reminds me more of the Tutu Atwell role in Los Angeles than the Deebo Samuel, because they do use him on a lot of like vertical looks deep down the field as opposed to like the horizontal concepes.
But you get that guy in space. You get
him in space. Yeah. Correct. Dude. He is shifty and he'll create, right? Like he's a mismatch in open space. Bryson, I wanted to get your thought on this though, because this is a huge storyline that I left off of the slide because I wanted it to get its own situation here. The Jonathon Mingo revenge game, because Jonathon Mingo in 4 weeks with the Dallas Cowboys has 41 routes run for a whopping 11 targets, a redonkulous 2 receptions for 10 yards with a mega 3 yards after catch. Now, I don't know if you're keeping score at home, but that is an entire double digits, 10 yards more than the 4th round pick we traded for.
Yeah. Listen, I'm listing my Jonathon Mingo collection on eBay if anyone's interested. I got a lot of good
guy.
Listen,
I had to bring that to Bryson, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't work out in Carolina. Okay. I had high hopes for Jonathon Mingo. He's not working out great in Dallas. To be fair, he doesn't have a great quarterback throwing him the ball currently. Maybe it looks a little different with Dak back there. I don't know. But to have 11 targets and what was it? Two catches?
2 receptions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, 2 receptions. That's not
2
great.
out of 11. That's not so bad, right? Like that's a double A ball player, single A baseball player.
You know what I'd love
grading that.
Yeah, I'd love to see is Smith Wade shut his ass down. That would be so gratifying.
If you're grading that on like a school level, it's probably an F. So sending a 4th round pick for an F, I don't know if that really equates to a good situation for your franchise, but yeah, I mean, look, this offense that we're facing this week, I would argue is one of the worst offenses we faced to this point. Maybe the Raiders are the only other one that comes close. This is a chance for the defense to look good. I'm not as scared of Rico Dowdle as Curtis is. I think this is one of the lesser running backs that they faced as well. The offensive line we mentioned it, is going through some injuries. This is a chance for the defense to get right. I believe that, and we'll see what happens. But the only player on this offense that scares me is CeeDee Lamb. And as long as J.C. Horn's out there, if I don't know why they don't do this, but if they allow him to shadow him, I believe J.C. Horn could remove CeeDee Lamb from this game. J.C. Horn is that good of a player. Even battling with a groin injury, I think J.C. Horn is good enough to mitigate CeeDee Lamb from this game. So we'll see what happens. They've never allowed that up to this point. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a J.C. Horn choice or a Ejiro Evero choice, but I think if they do it in any game, this is the one to try it and see what happens. But yeah, I'm not stressed about this offense at all this weekend.
It's just what are you going to get out of Cooper Rush? Because Cooper Rush put 34 on the Commanders, and we got our asses kicked by the Commanders. And I get it was Andy Dalton at the time, but like it's what Cooper Rush are you going to get in this game? Are you going to get a guy who's going to throw a couple picks, or are you going to get a guy who doesn't turn the ball over and gets a couple touchdowns? Because then you're going to have an issue. They held around against Cincinnati this weekend. That was a very close game. So I just don't want us selling out on this team either.
That's a fair point. That it's a almost like a bipolar situation with their quarterback, right? That one moment you could sit there and say it's the best facing lineup that you could have for the Carolina Panthers defense, having a quarterback that is timid to make throws and is also prone to making mistakes. But then at the other hand, you got a guy that when he does play with a little bit of confidence, he's not like totally inept, right? And he does have Jake Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb at his disposal. We already talked about, the beast that is Jonathon Mingo and Turpin and the rest of their offensive prowess. But I think that this offensive line, man, is a significant issue for this team, because what Cooper Beebe and Zach Martin brought was mauling. I'm talking physicality. I'm talking about moving large men away from their player. And I think that Rico Dowdle, which also, by the way, I love how Bryson made it seem like he was like Freddy Krueger to you or something, Curtis. Like you were scared of him. You were terrified, like waking up in the night and with sweats because of Rico Dowdle. I thought that was hilarious. So really good on you, Bryce. But without Cooper Beebe kind of paving the way, and he did this in Kansas State, man, and this is why I loved him so much as a prospect. He is a absolute difference maker in the run game. Without him, I think that they're in trouble, man. I really do think that is a significant thing. So that's something to monitor for the rest of the week is Cooper Beebe's status.
All right, let's go defense here.
All right, defensively, this is Christmas come early for the Carolina Panthers fans. 28.2 points per game allowed. That is 31st in the league. 365.3 yards per game. That is 25th in the league. 223.4 pass yards per game. That's 22nd. 141.9 rushing yards per game. That is 28th. 6.8 pass yards per play. Tied for 29th. 4.8 rush yards per play. Tied for 27th. 41 touchdowns allowed. That is second worst in the NFL. 52.7% of the time, teams are passing against the Cowboys. That is the 25th in the league. I don't know about y'all, but I haven't said 20 that much. Like, I haven't started numbers with 20 that much. Well, I won't go back into that because that story was going to get inappropriate and it was going to start to be damning for myself. So let me move past that. Let's get to the defensive keys. We've got Micah Parsons, who, and I'll be completely honest, man, that's the defensive key. Like, I probably could have just put a still picture of Micah Parsons and said, "There's your
you should have."
Yeah, honestly, I probably should have. Missed opportunity. Way to go, Ricky. 36 sacks for the Dallas Cowboys defense. That is tied for 9th in the league. 172 quarterback pressures. That is tied for 10th. 38% quarterback pressure rate. That's the best in the NFL. 7.9% sack rate. That's the second best in the NFL. Now, keep in mind that was with DeMarvion Overshawn, the linebacker, second-year linebacker out of Texas. Very special player in my mind. I was very high on him in the pre-draft process as well. They lost him with a ACL, MCL, PCL trifecta, just devastating injury for that young man. 50 rushes of 10-plus yards allowed. That is fifth most. And that picture up there is former first-round pick Mazi Smith out of Michigan, who, man, he has had an absolute tumultuous beginning of this season, but he started to come on a little bit stronger as of late and maybe finding a groove. So I have my eyes on 58 for this game as well up in the middle. 10.4% team stuff rate. That is a rush that is for negative yards or no yards. That is the worst in the league for a stuff rate. And now facing a guy like Chuba Hubbard, who makes his hay of not taking losses and getting the most out of every single touch that he has, and you got a guy like Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, even Cade Mays. I think Cade Mays has a bounce back week this week against this Cowboys defense because in a physical situation with less speed and less intensity coming from the middle right there, there's no Jalen Carter on this Dallas Cowboys defense. So I think this is a get-right opportunity for Cade Mays, at least for him to naturally regress back into the C-level player that he is. I don't think we're going to see him as that A-plus center that everyone was, pipe dreaming about him becoming. 31.1% of the time they blitz. That is tied for 8th. This is a Mike Zimmer defense. He is aggressive. And again, they lost linebacker DeMarvion Overshawn, who was second on the team in sacks with 5. Michael Parsons leads with 6.5, I believe. So, I mean, that is a significant loss. He also was their second leading interception guy who had a pick 6 in the year. We'll get into our bets a little bit later, but that also played a part in what I did for the bet. So there's a little bit of teaser for you, a little built-in segue, if you will. Newsman, what say you?
Yeah, I'm feeling better that Overshawn isn't playing, without a doubt. Like, that guy, I think he's a hell of a player. Micah Parsons is going to obviously be a problem, and they're going to have to do their damnness to try to keep him off Bryce. But I'm feeling a little bit better of just how Bryce responded this past week against the Eagles and how he evaded the rush because they were getting to him. I mean, they were blowing through some of these offensive linemen that have been playing really well for Carolina, and Bryce has been finding ways to escape. So that makes me feel a little bit better about it. Eric Kendricks is not no slouch. I've been a big fan of his dating back to Minnesota in his time. I'm curious to see how their DC, who's escaping me, and I know Dave Canales talked about him today. Someone help me out here.
Mike Zimmer.
Mike Zimmer. I've always liked his style of play when he was the head coach in Minnesota too. So I'm curious to see how he plays Dave. Dave talked about today about he's got a couple new wrinkles into his defense, but for the most part, what he's done in the past is what he's going to do type thing. So I'm kind of curious to see that. I do think they got some guys in their secondary, Deron Bland, Trevon Diggs, Hooker. But I do think that Overshawn is going to be – I think that's going to be big if with him not in there. And I really hope they take advantage. I think every week we talk about take advantage with Chuba, take advantage with Chuba. I think this is the week. I mean, just pound that ball and, take advantage of him not in there. Overshawn we're talking about because I do think Carolina can take advantage of that. And I think Chuba bodes well for them offensively. And then just the way Bryce has been playing, like I said, his escapability when he was facing a very, very good Eagles defense, he played very damn well in that game. He played really well against Denver and a top stout defense several weeks ago. So even the Kansas City Chiefs come to mind too. So Bryce has been playing up to par. I hope they do take advantage of Chuba though as well. And we'll see what they do if they mix in any of the backs or Mike Boone if they elevate him up, which I think they're going to have to this week. So yeah, I mean, I think there's opportunities here to really do. I do think this is a defense. I feel like the last couple of weeks we've been talking about man, they got their hands full this week. This is time to take advantage. This is time to points. This isn't a 20 to 17 point game. Let's see some points in this one. So
Bryson, can I give you one more thing before you give your input here? Because I think this is something that also matters a good bit. NFL Pro has their little insight tips. Bryce Young has averaged 7.9 yards per attempt and recorded a plus 4.1% completion percentage over expected when under pressure since reclaiming the starting job in week 8, which is a significant increase from his 3.1 yards per attempt and a negative 12.2% completion over expected when under pressure in weeks 1 and 2, right? So there's that. Now, strictly from this matchup standpoint, the Cowboys defense has given up 7.6 yards per attempt to opposing quarterbacks when under pressure this season, third most in the NFL. And we just talked about it. They blitz 31.3% of the time. So we can expect there to be pressure looks for Bryce Young, but the Cowboys are susceptible when bringing pressure, and Bryce Young has been crushing when seeing pressure. How does that make you feel, Bryson?
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Young has been cooking blitzes as of late. So please send them our way. Against this defense, I agree with Curtis. Run the ball. You could also pass the ball. You could do whatever the fuck you want against this defense. They're susceptible to anything, okay? I'm not worried about it whatsoever. Micah Parsons is a really good player. We have a better podcast than Micah Parsons does. So if he wants to go tat for tat with that, I think we can take him on that.
Let's go.
But we have a right tackle that's allowed the third least pressures in the NFL. I'm taking Taylor Moton to silence him, and I think this is a game where the Carolina Panthers can show the NFL they've shown over the past 3 or 4 weeks that they can go toe to toe with some of the best teams in the league in regards to the Chiefs and the Bucs, who are in first place in the NFC South now, and then of course the Eagles. But you can embarrass the Cowboys. And I think, obviously they have some injuries. If Dak was in this game, it'd be a different conversation. I think I like Dak Prescott as a quarterback. I like him as a person as well, with the mental health aspect and sharing the situations he's been through personally. I've always been a fan of Dak Prescott, but with Cooper Rush at quarterback and with Rico Dowdle as running back 1, and with a defense with
You
Trayvon
really
Diggs,
ate Dowdle, man.
The boogeyman.
he's not a good running back. I mean, I'm just gonna say that. With Trayvon Diggs, who led the league in interceptions a couple years ago and has completely fallen off the cliff, and is susceptible as a cornerback one. I mean, I think this team
and DaRon Bland just made his return last week. And Panthers fans will remember DaRon Bland because he had the pick six on Bryce Young last year that tied the NFL record for the most pick sixes in a season with his fourth.
Yeah.
But he just made his return last week, and they didn't look sharp with Trevon Diggs and DaRon Bland. And you got to think, man, if we're going to talk about the Jonathan Mingo revenge game, this is the Bryce Young on DaRon Bland revenge game. I want to see XL one-on-one with DaRon Bland, or I want to see Adam Thielen doing what he did to Cooper DeJean, whichever one it is. I don't care. I hate that I have to even get into that semantics after we got beat by the Eagles. But I want to see Adam Thielen do the same thing that he did to him and show him a little bit about like the seniority of the NFL and how you can become a good route runner even in your silver years, you know?
Oh yeah. And just real quick, we didn't get beat by the Eagles. We lost that game. 100%.
See, that's 100%. Why that's what I appreciate. Yeah. You guys ever seen Letterkenny? That's what I appreciate about you. Like that's just beautiful stuff. Right
we lost that game for all the Eagles fans in our chat earlier. I know it seemed like there was like 5 or 10 of them in here, but yeah, Love and Panthers both prediction. I think this.
Wow, wait. We're not getting into that yet.
I'm not getting into it, but I'm just saying I like that prediction. I like it.
Those beers are flowing well with you, I see.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
All right, let's get into this.
All right. Last thing. I kept it one slide again, man. We talked about this last week. We're not going to do full slides. We're not going to do the full breakdowns.
Riddle here? Come on. You're slacking.
I should have, shouldn't I? Yeah. You know what, man? It's a tough business here at my house. So we got to come up with the elf on the shelf shit every single night. Like I'm almost spent. So you're getting the most out of me right now.
Dude, I told my wife we're not doing that shit.
Yeah. Good luck. That'll change. Trust me. Not once, not twice, but 3 times the moral victory result. And I've got the little Ebenezer Scrooge is exhausted emoji right there because I'm going to tell you, man, like I do appreciate the fact that we're hanging tough with teams that we would have gotten boat raced earlier in the year and even last year. Like I can appreciate that. But a friend of the show and one of the best content creators out there, Aaron Duncan, Dunk on Demand for Unnecessary Bluntness. I was watching his show the other day and he said it exactly what I thought. I am sick and tired of this moral victory stuff, especially when it's games that we should have won. Not games that we like superseded our abilities. No, we played better throughout this football game. And it wasn't even our sharpest football game. You have to figure out a way. If you don't get over the hill of being close without winning, you're going to stay a loser. That's the reality of the fact. At some point, you have to win football games. And I think that we let the Tampa Bay game go. And then I think we let Philly go back to back. And I want to see this team start to put it together and win some of these football games. I put on there that I think that we were slightly less sharp execution-wise, and though quarterback 1 picks up the slack. Because I did think that there was a little bit of sloppiness, whether it was a communication pre-snap, whether it was some of the concepts downfield from the wide receivers on the play calls by Canales. This just wasn't as clean. Part of that absolutely is because of how good that Philadelphia Eagles defense is. And trying to plan for that and trying to scheme against that when you do not know what they're doing pre-snap. They don't give a lot of tells. So caveat, right? But it was absolutely not our sharpest game. The defense treads water, kind of, basically, a bit. Because, again, this is the whole segment that we just did. They held up. But was it because of them more? Or was it because of the Eagles more? Or is that also the way that football goes? And like you just have to play what your opponent gives you. And if they make mistakes, take advantage of it and hold your own. That's all I ask for as a football fan. So if that's what we get, that's what we get. But it also results in our current record, 3-10. So I'd like to see that number be a whole lot better. Matthew McConaughey, Wolf of Wall Street comes to mind. Those are rookie numbers. You need to boost those numbers on up, right? I won't beat my chest and do the whole thing there, but I absolutely want to see them get better and start winning some football games. And I think we have a terrific chance against these Dallas shit boys on Sunday.
All right, let's get into bets here, and we'll go to predictions. We'll start. Hopefully you guys can hear me. My computer up there for a second. Parlay this week 15. Who wants to start? Rick, you want to go? Let's go with Ricky.
Sure.
We'll go bottom up here.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start off here. I've got an interesting one here, and it's Chuba Hubbard over 12.5 receiving yards. His rushing line on this game, I believe, was 89.5, and I think that he can clear that. But that also just depends on how much work Canales will give him on that too, right? That just worries me the tiniest bit. I think he's cleared 89.5 like 3 times. Great opportunity to do it against this Cowboys team. But here's what I'll tell you about this line right here. The Dallas Cowboys, through 13 games, have never given up less than 13 yards to a running back receiving. Never. In every single game, 13 yards or more to the running backs. One time they gave up exactly 13, and that was to the Commanders. Now, I think what is most likely here, Chuba Hubbard is going to get a ton of work, right? You're talking about Mike Boone as your running back too. Raheem Blackshear is day-to-day. I don't think that they're going to trust throwing Mike Boone into like third down situations. I also know that we are looking at potential wet conditions here in Charlotte. I think that you can see some checkdowns. And when you go through and you look at the weekly statistics of what these Cowboys defense give up to running backs, it's not even a ton of receptions. They've only given up more than 4 receptions 3 times. But the amount of yardage they give up per reception, it's damn near 20 yards per reception. And when you remove DeMarvion Overshawn from the middle, who they are replacing him with is rookie out of Notre Dame, Maris Luafu. Now, Maris Luafu is also a transitional player that played safety, and now he's moving into linebacker. I think that's a significant opportunity for Chuba to make one man miss and gain 12.5 yards in one single reception. And Chuba has been an outlet. He's got, I believe, the Panthers have the 14th most targeted running back contributions in the passing game in the NFL, 74 targets. 45 of those have been to Chuba, even with healthy running mates. So it's not like this is some sort of by default Chuba's getting thrown the ball. He had Miles Sanders with him the entire time, right? He had Jonathon Brooks for a couple of games. They actually do target Chuba, and they give him the checkdowns. I think he has a real opportunity here to clear that very easily.
Bryson, what do you got here? Jerry Jeudy, hot hand.
Jerry Jeudy, yeah. With Jameis Winston at quarterback, 5 of the last 6 weeks, he's hit this over. Just 2 weeks ago, he hit 235 in the game, which is crazy, versus Denver, with versus a very good defense with Patrick Surtain on the other side of the ball there. I think this is a safe number. The Chiefs have actually given up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers in the NFL. So I think, obviously, the receiving yards add into that. I think this is going to be a shootout. The Browns are going to have to throw the ball to continue to keep up with the Chiefs. So I think 68.5 is a very safe over for Jerry Jeudy in this game.
Yeah, I went with an unusual approach this week, trying to get back on the wagon here with George Kittle. 21.5 for the longest reception. He's hit that in 6 out of 7 these last games, 8 out of 11. I do think if you watch this game this past weekend, I do think this could go back and forth. I know it's a divisional matchup. The Rams are allowing a 75% catch rate to tight ends with 4 touchdowns. Kittle went 150 this past in Chicago. I think he's got a real good shot. With his longest, the closest he's came was 29, and that was in October against Seattle. So like he's got a pretty good shot. He usually is good for at least 1 catch for 25 plus yards in a game. So feeling pretty confident about this one. So Alex, you can shove it up your ass, and hopefully you take this bet. So that's how I'm going to sell it this week. But if you guys do want to bet, we would appreciate it. It's signupexpert.com/Panthers. That is our designated link. You go there, please go there, and it will populate every single sports book in your area based off of your state that's available. You click that link, sign up to bet, and you can or sign up for that sports book, and then you can start betting from there. We would appreciate it if you use that designated bet. And this is a parlay through Bet365 we're rolling with this week. Bryson and Ricky hit last week. I dropped the ball, but hopefully we get back on this week and we all hit this week, which would be really nice to see. And I feel pretty confident about this one. For all three of us, I think Judy has a real good shot. That guy's he's been playing like one of the best wide receivers in the league right now. Chuba, he just got to catch the ball. That's the biggest. Just catch the ball in the backfield. You'll be all right.
He will.
So
he'll have 2 or 3 receptions, and he'll have about 23 yards receiving in this game.
Yeah, that's easy money.
Easy money.
All right, let's go to predictions from the chat, and then we'll go to our own as well. Wow, Alex likes my bet for once. I don't know if I like that or
Kiss of death. Kiss of death.
So Josh says, oh, that's not Josh. Here we go. 27-24 Cowboys.
I
So
saw
he's
when
going
Josh
with
put that in the chat, and Curtis, I think you saw my reaction when I saw that in the chat. I was like, "Oh no, why did you do that?"
So Mike Hollinger, he's rolling with the Panthers. He's got 20-13, so a low-scoring game. Panthers Bo is shooting for the stars here. I like it. Panthers win 34-17. And then Alex, I believe, was the only other one. Yeah. So Alex here, he's got the Panthers as well, 28-24. Who wants to start? Ricky, Bryson, what do we got?
Sure, I'll go.
Right.
I'm pretty close to Alex's. I'm going 26-23 Panthers. And it's not necessarily because I don't think that we're not capable of scoring more, but if conditions are dicey, I think they rely on the run game. I think that we could get a potential defensive score against Cooper Rush. I think he makes a critical mistake in this one, and perhaps this is the J.C. Horn game, right, where he's a little bit injured and he gets himself a pick six and finally brings these Cowgirls down to where they're supposed to be here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is on the bus on their way out. I just think that this is a game that we win, and the score may be closer than the game is. I think that we are looking like we are in control of this football game for the majority of it. I like the matchups, and I really hope that we lean into that offensive line and that Cowboys defensive line.
Yeah, this is a line that's continued to move in the favor of the Carolina Panthers. Started at 1.5, and now it's at 3. We talked about the lack of offense. We talked about the lack of defense for the Dallas Cowboys, whether it be injury-wise or whatever the case is. This is a team that isn't very good, and the Panthers are playing good football right now. You cannot take that away from them. They went toe-to-toe with 2 teams that are vying for the Super Bowl, in the Eagles and the Chiefs. I think the Panthers win this game, and I think they win it comfortably. I have the Panthers winning 27-17, 10-point win. I think Bryce Young has his best game of his NFL career, continuing to build off of good game after good game after good game, and he takes advantage of a defense that is not very good.
Does he get a touchdown on Deron Bland?
Yeah, absolutely. He gets a touchdown.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Puts one on his head. Absolutely.
Let's go. Does XL Mosses him maybe?
Jalen Coker.
Jalen Coker?
Yeah. Coker.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. After watching Dallas on Monday, they made me more nervous than I would have expected to be. How well they played against Cincinnati. I thought that
the
game
Bengals defense is terrible. Come on.
Can I have my take here? So they made me nervous. I thought their defense played decent. Dowdle is playing much better as a running back. CeeDee Lamb is going to be tough. and I don't take the Panthers much. I can't remember the last time I took a Panthers in a game we predicted. It's been a while. But we're going to flip the script this week and say fuck it. I think the Panthers are going to win this one handsomely. I'm going to say Panthers by 1 million. No, really though, I do think this is the week Carolina takes advantage of a beat up defense. I'm banking on Cooper Rush having some issues with Carolina's defense. I feel like they're starting to build up on the sacks. If J.C. Horn plays, I think we can get a turnover in this one. I'm going big this week. I'm going to go 34-20. Carolina wins. This is a big game for Bryce Young and company. XL bounces back. I think Coker gets involved, and that will help out. I think Chuba's going to have a big game. I'm hoping JT Sanders picks up a little bit more because he struggled this past week. Yep. He was kind of non-existent, really. So I think they're going to get it together this week, and they're going to win this one. I know Dallas is coming in pissed off. Everyone saw Micah Parsons. He looked pretty emotional on the sidelines in that Cincinnati game. So they're going to come out with vengeance too. But I think Carolina's been this close these past few weeks, and I think they finally come out on top. And I think they come out handsomely in this game, and I think it's going to be a big one. So that's what I'm hoping for. Doesn't happen very often, so mark it down on the calendar because I'm usually the pessimistic one here. So let's hope we're on the right side of this one.
You don't. But I do love your JT Sanders inclusion, just for what it's worth. And Alex in the chat seems to like it as well. But I think JT has an opportunity here. We saw Drew Sample make multiple catches against that Cowboys defense. And Drew Sample is not JT Sanders. I'm not saying JT Sanders is a world beater, but he is, in my opinion, better than Drew Sample. So I do like his prospects in this game too.
I think we're going to leave it there. I do appreciate everyone for tuning in. We got 540 plus. If you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that for us. We would appreciate it. We want to thank all the super chats tonight as well for contributing to our cause. We do appreciate you guys every single week. You guys have been killing it, and we are very thankful for that. I'm still on the fence if I'm going to this game. I do have tickets to it. I'm on call this weekend, so I don't know if I'll be there, but I'll figure it out. I would like to be there, but I know Dallas likes to take over a lot of stadiums they're at. So we shall
even
see.
More reason to show up, man. Fight back. Dude, don't let them take
call,
you down.
though. Like, I'm rolling the dice, man. I'm on call.
I'm going to a Christmas bar on Friday, like some pop-up Christmas bar. So I don't think I'll be recovered by Sunday. But if I was, I would be there. But you throw me in a winter wonderland with a bartender, I'm in a world of hurt. So y'all will probably be lucky to catch me next Wednesday.
But yeah, we got a couple more weeks here before Christmas. I know I'm going to say it out loud. We tried to do it a couple of weeks ago, but we will be we're doing a Sunday game at Ricky's house coming up here. We will be live for a second time in a week. So I know you guys have been asking for that, and we've been trying to make it work. So that will happen in January. We're not backing down from that, damn it. If I got to cut off one of your damn legs, it's going to happen. We're going to make it happen for you guys. But yeah, so we'll be back next week, and hopefully we're talking about a win. But until then, keep pounding.